Hello, everybody. Welcome to Royale Masters, not Summer Clash, even though that is going on right now, and it is summertime. This is King of the Hill. Hello, everyone. I am Andrew Guy. Joining me today is Joshua AC Sharon, a former CRL West champion, a WCG champion, a Summer Clash caster, and AC, it's your first day doing King of the Hill, which is a lot of fun. We've got a great lineup of 8 players, and I'm going to tell you how it works since it's your first day here. And I guess I'll tell everyone else how it works in case you guys don't know how the King of the Hill version works for you. So, King of the Hill, right? We've done it before. We've heard of it before. Well, here at Royale Masters, it's just a bit different. Yesterday was a qualifier going on. They played through that. They played for seeding order. But what are we doing here today? Well, there's 8 players. They are set in a lineup of 1 through 8. Players will play each other in succession. 1 to 2, 2 to 3, unless you win. If you win, you get $100 and you stay in that spot until someone beats you. When you lose, you go to the end of that line to get another chance at your $100. AC, we've never seen a format like this before. It's a lot of fun. We also have card evolutions available, but I just mentioned money a little bit. We've been giving away a lot of money lately, man. Why don't you talk to me about the money that we're giving away today at King of the Hill?
That's right. Another day, another dollar. We have a $3,000 total prize pool. All of these contestants have already received $75. So if they go 0-3, 0-4, whatever it is for the day, they're still walking away with $75, but that's not where you want to end it. $100 per win. I believe, this is my first time, but I believe Muhammad Light did get 13 wins or something crazy. So that means last month, which was the month where he did it, I believe he made $1,300 from this competition. That is insane.
Yeah,
but I mean 13, he's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, he is insane. He's picked up, he's above 60K on the year. $1,375 with that qualifying $75. Card evolutions are available, and as I mentioned, we've been doing Summer Clash, which has been like a party mode for Royale Masters. We did triple elixir, we did triple draft, and it was all Muhammad Light, winning everything from last month's King of the Hill to triple elixir to triple draft. But triple draft was interesting because we didn't have card evolutions. AC, with triple elixir, we had card evolutions and they were everywhere. I mean, they were the entire day. There was not one game that went by without an evolved card. I'm assuming today will probably be the same.
Yeah, you'd have to assume. Everybody's been talking about it through all forms of social media, but card evolutions are famous and infamous as well. And I expect to see it in every single deck, just trying to abuse the meta, because that's what you should do when you're a pro. You should abuse the meta in every single which way, and I think that's what we're going to see today.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. You can't run away from the meta, so you just need to join it. There's a lot of players out there that talk about what's going on. They have their opinions, and, again, since Muhammad Light is not competing today here in this King of the Hill, I'll at least mention something that I've noticed with him is just that he may acknowledge things in the meta that are or are not working, maybe are a little balanced or unbalanced, but he just plays through it. Yep. And I think that that's something that you have to do if you want to be the best. And as you said, AC, like, you can't do anything about it, so you might as well just try them out. A person that has been very vocal about the meta shifting and, of course, card evolutions, a good friend of both of ours, someone who I'm very excited to see here today, is Lucas, a guy that was at World Finals last year. Lucas, Sweep, and Dominic are all repeat customers of World Finals. They'll all be here today. We have Assaf, Bob the Rock, Dominic, I already just said Dominic, yeah. Sweep, Dominic, Lucas, all world finalists. Assaf and Bob the Rock are 2 guys that I've been a little curious about. Bob the Rock was kind of a guy of maybe yesteryear in Clash Royale, but he's been kind of showing up more and more, and you know what? I'm a fan of Bob the Rock. It'd be cool to see him show up in CRL this year. Assaf is a name that you and I and everyone on the scene have kind of been waiting to see if they'll kind of have their come out moment. It felt like it might happen last year, but it just didn't, missing World Finals. And then, of course, we have Pedra, Sosa, and Umaton. Pedro, our only golden ticket holder here in 2023. Any thoughts on our lineup? We got a lot of big names, AC.
I mean, this is an insane lineup, first of all. Yeah. I mean, just looking at all the names, I mean, that's 7 names that are World Finals level or have been to the World Finals. That is insane. Umaton, or how do we figure out the pronunciation?
I think Umaton is what we're gonna go with for now. We'll see.
Okay, perfect. That's the only player that I don't know by heart. I don't know all their data just inside and out, but I mean, obviously, the big name for me has to be Lucas. I've been waiting to see what he's going to do in any of these tournaments. And I know he had that one tournament in Spain, I believe, the Andorra tournament, where he did decently enough. But I want to witness it myself. So I'm finally going to be able to do that, and I'm going to see what he's about.
Yeah, I mean, that was the only in-person tournament of 2023. Lucas was able to go there and pick up a big win over big players. I think, was it Morton that got second? Again, I can't remember exactly. I think Mohamed Light was there, but virtually. So, you know, a lot of really big names that Lucas went through. And yeah, Lucas is one of those guys that I'm just kind of waiting for him to figure out whatever is going on in 2023, even if that just means getting a golden ticket or whether it's just getting higher and higher up on the leaderboard. Umaton, who you were just talking about, the Japanese player who's a little bit more of an unknown as we hop into game number 1 here. He is on the CRL leaderboard. He has 90 points. He's ranked 156. He's picked up $500 on the year. So still finding his footing, and we'll see if he can find it in time. Two people that are also very much in the CRL competitive scene are Soki, who is ranked 9th right now. You also might know him as Sosa, top of your screen. And then bottom of your screen, Pedro, given a golden ticket by Momo in our second monthly qualifier. I can't remember. Third. I think it was third. I think it went trying to remember the exact order here. It was Pedro, and then most recently it was Mugi, and then before that it was Pandora, right? Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay. Starting strong here on a Wednesday morning. So it's going to be Monk Balloon, which is already interesting because I feel like we're seeing different things from what we saw right away in Triple Elixir Day. Triple Elixir Day, it was just non-stop RG and Hog. Looks like today we're going to start with some Monk. Monk, a very good card right now in the meta in terms of Firecracker evolution and RG pushback for evolved RGs.
And with this deck, I mean, I don't know for a fact, but it could be some variation of a mirror match. And there we go, guards used from Pedro. Yeah. So it looks like it's just going to be a mirror match right here. And a mirror match to start the day is always enjoyable. And again, I just want to preface this. In this tournament, it is like you're allowed to use any deck over and over, correct?
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's no dual mode.
Okay, so Balloon has always been one of those decks that a lot of players have just loved in these kind of formats just because it's so control-y and the better player oftentimes wins. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see a lot of these players given that freedom if they choose to go Loon.
Very interesting call there. We'll see if that is the draw as a Balloon Kite here from Sosa actually connects on tower. And then a really nice use of a Musketeer and a late Bomb Tower plays some clean defense for a 1,000 HP lead. And a nice Kite on this Phoenix with his guards. Although they will get turned around with the egg there. And then Sosa right back on offense.
Yeah, arrows are going to come down. And with the help of the arrows and the guard, that's going to be a Loon making its way to the tower. Snowball off, but that's going to be at least one shot.
Yeah, the snowball pushes to the bomb tower death, which is actually a pretty nice interaction there for Pedro, but still down by 1,000 roughly in both lanes.
Luna again getting aggressive. Miner is going to take the aggro of the crown tower, so he's not going to use the Loon as a tank just yet. Arrows coming out on defense, and arrows and snowball coming out on offense. Yeah. It's going to force another response from Pedro, and it looks like an overextension. But if your opponent is going to be forced to use the arrows on defense, then it's okay. You can get that aggressive right there because it is double elixir.
So I'm going to just check and get some confirmation here about card evolutions being available or not, because it does feel like maybe the players aren't sure if they are, because it feels like they would play them if there were, but also I don't know if in friendly battles, no, in friendly battles they're available, they should be, so all right. I mean, maybe we're just in a very peculiar spot here as balloons go flying in both directions. Really, Sosa doing an incredible job controlling this game.
Yeah, I mean, Loon gameplay is just always going to be my favorite kind of gameplay to watch because so many of these players have different ways of playing. Are they going to get aggressive? Are they going to play it correctly? Because Loon is one of those decks that's very difficult to play correctly, and it's for this reason. There's so many back and forth, you know, just options on offense and defense, and so it's just this constant mind game of how you want to defend and how you want to attack.
Yeah, I mean, and that was a really great defense there by Sosa, protecting his Musketeer with the Snowball and then Prediction Miner to come down, keeping that Muskie alive. And it's the small things like that that have kind of separated him in this game as a big push comes down the left-hand lane. Balloon does get pulled. Musketeer comes down late, gets on top of the Miner, though, so a Snowball will have to come out as Pedro is making a great case for this in the left-hand lane.
Yeah, that's going to be a Loon getting the talent down to 379, 58 HP. Wow.
58! And Pedro showing why he's got the golden ticket. 58 HP and a little bit of luck there after Sosa completely controls the game. That balloon, that last push of the balloon on the left-hand side. I mean, like you said, I love watching balloon gameplay. I hate playing a great balloon player because they are just relentless and they evolve their attacks every single time they come through, making it harder and harder and harder for you to figure out where you need to go, and you end up painting yourself in a corner. And man, Sosa, 58 HP, just misses it by a hair.
Yeah, I am so happy that it feels like there's just a lot of freedom with the fact that you don't have to use specific decks, and you know, you can go back to the same card. And seeing players with that freedom both go to Loon as their first game, it's refreshing to see, because you know there's just going to be a lot. We've been used to the same meta with CRL and the fact that you have to use the RGs, you have to use specific cards and specific decks, and just this Loon gameplay, it's so refreshing for my eyes. Both of these players played it a different way, and then at the end, Pedro's style ended up being more beneficial because he was finally able to get that one push. And Sosa on the other side, I mean, his aggression throughout the match was beautiful until it wasn't, until he got too aggressive, until he did that Loon at the bridge.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the matchup and it's basically the exact same except for the Phoenix and the Musketeer, right? And that Phoenix and Musketeer, you actually figure the Muskie might actually be better because it's harder to get on top of with Snowball and Musketeer, Snowball and Miner. Excuse me, when you saw Sosa defending that numerous times over. But Phoenix comes on through for Pedro, and yeah, that's a great game. I mean, you know, I even messaged the producer just being like, yo man, are they sure card evolutions are available? But if you look at this deck, it does make sense on both sides of it. You know, you have the guards for great single target DPS, you got the monk there to push back the RG, to bounce back that firecracker shot. The barbs aren't really much of a concern, but you do have the bomb tower there, and obviously the evolved skeletons are something that we haven't really seen work yet. So while card evolutions are available, like you said, AC, it's really interesting to see them go with a deck that has so much control, so much offensive prowess, and also a great way to counter the meta without leaning into it. And we'll see how long that actually lasts, where people avoid the evolutions. As we hop into game number 2 here, as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, Umaton playing, looks like Hog Rider, and if there's Hog, most likely going to be Firecracker, and if there's Fisherman, most likely going to be Royal Giant.
Mighty Miner in the back, Monk at the front for Pedro. And the amazing thing about Pedro is, with this format, he's already up $100 for the day, and the day's just started. So just very impressive for him, and good timing on the bottom. Firecracker is going to get the shot as the Monk's ability ends, and it won't be able to affect the Firecracker.
Yeah, perfect timing there, and a great call. Yeah, I mean, you're going to be playing Clash Royale anyway if you're these guys, so you might as well win $100 while you're doing it every time you pick up a win. I mean, man, if I won $100 every single time I won a game of Clash Royale, I would be significantly more wealthy than I am right now.
A $400 error.
Yeah, so like I'd have 5,000 more dollars. That's it.
RG in the back from Pedro. Pedro hasn't used a building, but he hasn't used a big spell as well, so he's likely just going no building whatsoever in an RG deck. And I don't know how I feel about this. Have you seen this deck before? Have you seen it on ladder whatsoever? I don't know why you wouldn't use a building in an RG deck. in this way.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a swerve in terms of like a couple of these units. Like you usually don't see Phoenix and Hunter together in an RG.
Yeah.
You know, you don't always see Monk and Fisherman together, but we have seen versions of that, like Monk, Fisherman plus Hunter, but it's really the Hunter and the Phoenix that kind of confuses me. I don't know if he's maybe worried about something happening in the skies. We'll see if lightning is dispelled full.
Right here,
this Royal Giant, it is Fireball. Okay, and
wow,
that is a very healthy Royal Giant.
Yeah, RG right here is going to get massive damage. The Mighty Miner is on top of the RG, but the Fisherman will pull. And there we go. In response, the Firecracker Evo will get a second shot, and it's going to jump out of the range. So this is a massive. Pedro's huge advantage just gets erased just like that.
Yeah, and this is where that Monk is going to come into play. Umaton looking to probably get his push stopped right in its tracks with that Monk ability coming on through. Now a Hog Rider comes down. Hopefully a Fisherman will be there somewhere. There it is. Fisherman a little close, but does get the pull as that Firecracker damage comes through. Look at that.
Yeah, this is, it's looking like it's over. Just complete domination of the board. And he's going to be able to get aggressive with the Hog, with the EQ, and that's going to be game. What a match right there. Or what is it again? Umaton.
See, this is kind of the conversation that you and I were having the other day, and I'm like very confused, or not confused, but curious about like what the pros think about evolutions and playing through bad matchups or playing through scenarios where you're down by a lot. I mean, there's no way that that deck should have come back. Really, there isn't, if that's just a regular Firecracker. But since it's an evolved Firecracker, you're able to cycle a second one down on the board. The splash damage pushes through, that poison damage on the ground. It goes from being a, you know, I'm wondering if like matchup-wise, you see something go from like a 70-30 back to a 50-50, or in a situational matchup like that where RG is up, you know, Hog is down a few thousand HP. I guess not having the building really does become part of the conversation, but you still have the Fisherman. I don't know, man. Is that Firecracker too powerful, or do you think it did just what it was supposed to even that game out?
Okay, so here's the, I mean, basically my entire thought process revolves around the fact that there was an interaction where the evoed Firecracker ended up shooting the Monk, and the Monk's reflection didn't have it so that the Firecracker take itself out.
Yeah.
Yep. And if that's going to be the actual interaction where it's not just a mistake with how the Firecracker just kind of ran up the board, then that becomes very broken very quickly. And yeah, I don't know. I need to really confirm if that interaction is on purpose, because if it is, the Firecracker Evo is just so good.
So just to clarify for the people at home, you're talking about when the Monk went down the left-hand lane, I believe, after that evolved Firecracker stayed alive. Firecracker shoots at the Monk with the Monk ability on. It bounces back at the evolved Firecracker, but the Firecracker, maybe because the Monk died, it stepped up too quickly and didn't die in its own poison. Is that what I'm gathering from what you're saying?
Yeah. And I just, if the actual interaction is the Firecracker avoids its own shots, then that's just one more thing that is just broken about it.
Does seem like the Firecracker is the evolved card of choice in tournaments, but then who knows? I mean, in our triple elixir tournament and on the leaderboard, it's been all about RG, and a start like that is tough. Dominic looks for the Fishboy pull with his own Fishboy, gets a great defensive pull off, and now has Skeletons and a Phoenix, so he'll take a lot of damage here, but he will take his opponent's tower and have a decent counter push. And he should, yeah, he still does have a little bit of HP remaining, 415 in that bottom left-hand side.
And I believe the Crown Tower is going to lock onto the Phoenix. There you go. And so the Ghost is going to get 3 shots, almost a 4th, but not quite. And the Phoenix, in response from up top, will not be able to do any damage as well. So that is just a massive situation for Dominic, and great offense. And it all stems from just one Fisherman prediction. Not necessarily winning him the game, but this kind of advantage where you can already do pocket RGs with 133 left is just so massive.
I've always kind of liked Dominic's aggressive play style, and Umaton there maybe not expecting to get that Fishboy pull that early on, and there you go. Dominic once again He goes Skelly's right in the pocket looking for that fisherman. And I think, AC, this is kind of evidence of just Dominic playing at a higher level for a little bit longer. Umaton has showed up, you know, very little. He's on our leaderboard very deep in it. I think, like I said, I think he's like 190th or something like that. Dominic, on the other hand, you know, he was at World Finals. He's 81st on the leaderboard in CRL, so not as high as he'd like to be. But just based off those couple plays, you know, the very first predictive fisherman catch, and then the second one with the Skellies in the pocket, it just shows he's like, look, I'm at that next level, guys. There are levels to this game, and I'm at the next one.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Clean defense right there. No fisherman to pull. He's just going to set up for an actual push. Good game coming out from up top. So, like every other player in this game, he will keep defending. And, okay, we will see what will happen in the final 25 seconds.
Yeah, there you go. Just letting that elixir leak. Is Dominic now taking king of the hill? So the hill has been fickle today, if you will. People hopping in, hopping out very quickly. It was last month, like AC said. Mohamed Light, the GOAT, picks up 13 wins. I think 10 or 11 of them were in a row. I know it was at least 10. Just can't remember if he got that 11th or 12th win. But either way, Dominic now taking that king spot. We have a lot of matches to get through today. Remember, 24 matches in total, $100 per match. And if you win, you get to stay on top. You can play whatever you want. You know, very unique that we started today off without any card evolutions, because obviously in every game since, every player has been playing them. And I know, I'm sure Tasty Bacon, our producer, was just like, bro, what? Like, I cleared this before the match. It was one of the big questions you had. But then the very first game, we didn't see any. So, you know, players and casters alike are just confirming that they're available. And now that they are clearly available, people have been playing them. We're starting to see the domination. The real question is, AC, will we see another non-evolution today? And will we see the skeletons actually do anything? And I don't think so on the latter.
I really don't. I just don't understand. And honestly, I'm totally okay with it. I'm fully okay with a card needing a buff. I'm gonna fall into the same category as most pros in this response, where if a card gets released, I'd rather see it be just not even viable whatsoever, so that way it can find a proper place in the meta, instead of just being, hey, you know, one card cycle or one cycle for the evolution to pop up, and then it does all this. Like, I wouldn't want that. So I'm fully okay with the skeletons not being great, really.
We got a replay here we're going to take a look at from that Firecracker Monk evolution from just a little bit ago against Pedro and Sosa. So here we go, AC, just to break it down for you. There's the Monk walking down the lane. Healthy Firecracker, healthy-ish Monk. Firecracker shoots at the Monk, slowing this down. Loving this replay. Shoots again. Dude, how did it not die?
Yeah.
Do we have more of that replay that we can see, or no? Or do we have to go into game? Can we just keep running that for a second? It's okay if we can, but it's just crazy because, like, I love you. So here we go. We're watching this again. If there's a game being played, whatever. This is more important. So here we go. Firecracker shots in. This is what we just saw. The Monk walks in. It's getting poisoned. Pops the ability, maybe is a hair early, but in good enough time. And AC, it just lives.
Yeah.
Because the Monk ability comes down. So I was incorrect. It has nothing to do with the health of the Monk or the placement or the timing. Maybe if Juicy's here, he's like, it's a true red, true blue interaction, because he always loves talking about those. But dude, that's just a card that just beats out a 5 elixir Monk's 1 elixir ability. That's a 6 elixir use that a 3 elixir card that has been evolved completely ignores. That's crazy. That's crazy to me.
And then it also allows you to keep cycling and keep getting aggressive. I mean, just that one interaction obviously just had to have won him the game, because that really just shouldn't happen, regardless of Clash Royale's code telling it to happen. That just should never happen.
Just emotionally, it shouldn't happen.
Yeah, I don't like it. So.
Bottom of your screen, been missing Sweep this season. Had a great showing last year at World Finals. Dominic also at World Finals. Had a decent showing, maybe not the showing that he would have liked. Some unfortunate stuff there happened with him. He had an interesting Hog Rider Lava Hound deck that was really all about catching your opponent off guard, and due to some issues with the admins and just some unfortunate situations, Dominic's run at World Finals was probably cut a lot shorter than he would have liked. Sweep, on the other hand, had the best moment in his career, honestly. I think he doubled his career winnings in just that one weekend. And, you know, it was a lot of fun to talk about him at CRL as he opens up with a very Sweep-like deck. And as I'm rambling, a big-time cannon cart connection on that left-hand side. Dominic goes to the skies, and AC, this is like the second most popular deck out there on the leaderboard. It's basically evolved RG with Phoenix, and then this deck with the evolved barbs.
Wow. Okay. Sweep. Running a actually, and with that, just the interaction that really won him the game was the tower locked onto the skeleton dragon instead of the cannon cart. And I actually have no idea how that interaction worked out. So if we want to get another replay, that would just be great to get that spot. And Sweep just off to a phenomenal start at this point. I mean, Dominic doesn't really have an answer to the archers. And so Sweep can, I mean, just really have free reign to cycle archers, force out a fireball. And by the time his push is actually down the field, he could just have another set of archers already. So I'd like to see him cycle the archers quickly, but it's fully up to him what he wants to decide.
Yeah, I was just going to say, get that Skeleton King down so you can cycle that second set of archers. And AC, it was split. It was a split set of Skeleton Dragons in the beginning. Is that right? That was able to do that weird draw on the cannon cart?
Yeah. One of them went to the left, one of them went to the right, and the one that went to the left just kind of appeared in front of the cannon cart.
So right now, Sweep in a little bit of trouble trying to manage all of this red on his side of the board, and I think he'll end up doing a pretty decent job. Take some good damage on his King Tower. 2284 to 2098 with also 2200 on Sweep's Princess Tower, and now he goes aggressive in the pocket here with Barbs. Barbs responded in kind by Dominic.
Yeah, not a huge fan of those Barbs in the pocket. They don't even reach the Tombstone to take that further out. So just a weird spot right there. Fireball gonna come out and actually miss the right Skeleton Dragon. So just in awkward spots for both players right now. But it looks like Dominic's gonna start controlling the board once again.
Yeah, Dominic doing a good job there, looking for those archers with that high Mega Minion, kind of baits them out. And then that Fireball, while it did miss the right Skeleton Dragon, it hit the left one, which meant that there was nothing there for the Barbs. So then a cannon cart was baited out as well. So Dominic, like you said, AC, doing a really good job of starting to control the game here, kind of recognizing his opponent doesn't have a big spell. And again, Sweep with these weird Barb plays, I knew that Fireball was available for Dominic, so I don't really love that pull.
Yeah, and right here, Dominic is going to be able to get very aggressive. 3 Evoed Barbs up on the board, the Balloon, the Skeleton Dragons, the Lava. He can't use the arrows just yet, even though he does it. So then you have to worry about the Lava Puffs on top of the tower. Dominic, again, just resetting right now, setting up the Tombstone. He does not want to allow another cannon cart Barbs at the bridge. And 40 seconds left. I mean, he just has a lot on the board for defense. And just having troops up and buildings up is so massive at this point in time.
What is Sweep doing? I keep watching his plays, and I'm not upset with them, but I feel like Dominic is just playing a consistently regular game of Clash Royale, and Sweep is playing like really great and then really poorly. And it's kind of just like evening out in the middle to give us this great game back and forth. But it feels like Dominic has been just completely consistent, whereas Sweep has done some really weird stuff. And I guess that is pretty on brand for Sweep.
Yeah. Weird gameplay would be how I would describe it as well. It really comes down to Dominic started his first official push, and then Sweep in response set up the Skeleton Dragons and the Skeleton King, and then mortared the other lane so the Loon wouldn't even get pulled. So it's just really odd overall.
It just felt like he was like maybe a little out of practice, which is why he was able to do some of that great stuff. I feel like I just watched an episode of like Black Mirror Clash Royale edition. Like it didn't make any sense at all. I feel a little weird from it, but I enjoyed myself, you know? Like I don't understand exactly what happened, but I'm gonna tell my friends to go watch that match. But hey, whatever, man. Suit yourself. Dominic picks up a win there. If we do have any of those replays, we'd love to see them. Sweep comes out with a very, very sweep-like deck. He plays it really, really well early on. And then, yeah, AC, like you said, there's just some weird plays. That high mortar that goes opposite lane doesn't pull anything at all. That tower on the left-hand side is basically already done, but he ends up spending an arm and a leg, so he loses his tower. And then you have the barbs in the pocket. Like you said, don't get a tombstone. Then you have the barbs plus cannon cart that go for king tower when his opponent has fireball in hand. So just some really weird stuff that happened, and then you know, just not really a great way to defend. Yes, you can double cycle archers, but then when you get into double and triple elixir, those fireballs become a lot more easy to pull the trigger on.
Yes, and actually I'm glad that you said that, because he, as soon as I said that, he played every other card that he could possibly play except the archers. But I still stand by that the archers were a good play. I really think cycling the archers, and he would have had a chance. If you cycle the archers multiple times, you're going to get a second setup while they have an offensive push, but you can also set up a second mortar, and so you can pull the loon to the king tower, because you know your opponent is going on the right lane after they set up the lava, after they set up the tombstone. So if you do an early mortar, you can have a second one by the time the loon gets placed on the board.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, it was kind of set up exactly to do that. We had the Skeleton King working down the left-hand lane. There was a tombstone on the board, so the Skeleton King was already stacking souls. You get that first set of archers out. By the time that Skeleton King is crossing the bridge, you've already got the second set of archers back in your hand. Maybe not the elixir to play them, but that's okay, because your first set should either still be on the board to either bait out the spell, or they're just putting in work. So, yeah, I was very, very surprised with some of that stuff there, AC. But here we go. Lucas in game number 1 for him on the day. Is Dominic still stacking that cash? He is our current and standing king, as Lucas goes evolved barbs right into a graveyard, but bomb tower and EQ there to match, and a pretty good defensive pull there, or send I should say, by Dominic.
Man,
interesting deck here from Lucas.
Yeah, I'm recognizing that I don't recognize some of these decks, so I'm actually extremely excited to kind of catch up with the meta. I'm planning on watching a lot of Twitch gameplay to just figure out what is good, because Lucas's deck, it's exciting, and I have no idea what the next card is going to be before he plays it. So really excited to see what Lucas is going to pull off with this game. Dominic on the other side, he's running what I recognize, and just going to run hog EQ until someone figures out a way to stop that deck.
Yeah, I really like the point that you make there about Lucas. And also, Lucas is a guy that while he will play things that are like newer, or he'll try things out, he is not a player that strays too far from the meta. So if he is playing a deck, I mean, that should let you know that there is something pretty viable about it, or at least he believes so at the moment. So evolved barbs running into an evolved firecracker with a freeze. You love to see the freeze. It does take care of the firecracker, and the barbs get on top of the tower. And AC, this deck does look like a lot of fun.
Yes, massive play right there. Great timing from Lucas as the firecracker is warming up to get that second shot. He gets the perfect timing down. So just great play from Lucas, because you know, I mean, any other player in that situation can actually just lose the tower. Because of that timing, it was so difficult to get a second card down and to even just be prepared for that. But on Dominic's end, and to give a lot of credit to him, he was ready, and he had the goblins ready, and he had all the responses he needed.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a great point that you make. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, where Dominic does just seem to kind of play at that next level, and Umaton figured that out the hard way. As a freeze comes down defensively here, nice play there by Lucas, kind of looking for what his opponent was going to play next, but because of that, ends up taking a lot of damage on that right-hand side, 10-12 to 10-58. Interestingly enough, Dominic has been sending those hogs down the left-hand lane a lot, but it's the right-hand tower that's the lowest on the board for both of these players.
Skeleton Dragon cycled from Lucas, and Inferno Tower placed up top. Can it lock onto the Hog? It will, with the help of the arrows, and it should be able to actually take up the Mighty Miner as well. So good Inferno Tower. I don't get to say that very often, but it's going to get a ton of value.
Yeah, it was almost predictive with the timing that he played on it, and this is a great log send, and now the freeze has to come in, but the Mighty Miner's up front, so Lucas has to use the ability so that Firecracker Splash does not come in, and that Hog plus Firecracker synergy is just absolutely masterful.
And right here, Lucas has to figure something out. He is not getting any kind of offensive pressure whatsoever. 57 seconds left, Firecracker placed at the bridge, and this has to be it. Evoed Barbs, there you go. I mean, you just place them down and see what they can pull off. 46 seconds left.
Yeah, I mean, that freeze had to come down, though, for Lucas because of a perfectly timed and placed Ice Spirit by Dominic, freezing all those barbs. The evolved barbs and the evolved Firecracker, that Ice Spirit, I think, would have actually ended that push. So a great decision there. And then Lucas goes Graveyard instead of Inferno Tower, so he has to freeze defensively. 431, 322, Hog Rider coming down the lane. Larry's on the tower. Ice Spirit plus Skelly Drags and the King Tower. It's barely enough.
I mean, Freeze is going to come down, has to force out a defensive Earthquake. It's not going to be enough. I believe 123 left. If he had to eat,
not going to do it. Skeleton Drag gets a shot.
2 seconds left. 2 ticks. 132. Wow.
I mean, that's world-class gameplay. Those are why they were both at World Finals last year. That was an incredible game back and forth. You love the defensive freeze there by Lucas. When you have no other option, you got a defensive freeze. The Earthquake's coming out like crazy for Dominic. That was a really great match.
I mean, even just the Hog at the end of the game, and in the back of my head, I'm saying, Lucas, please predict, place things at the bridge. You have to. And as I'm starting to form those thoughts, he's already played both cards that he has in his hand to stop the Hog. So he was thinking it and then some. I mean, perfectly played from both players. Both players recognizing how the situation should play out. And it was, I mean, it was one of those things where it was like chess, where both players kind of knew how to checkmate the other player. And it was just whether those plays would actually end up in a checkmate, because you know you have to get aggressive with Hog, so you play Hog, but you know your opponent has to, so I'm going to place everything at the bridge, slow down with Ice Wiz, well, and then I have to Graveyard to win, I have to Earthquake to defend, and then try and cycle it. There's so many things.
We have the replay, so let's look at the replay.
Beautiful.
And let's, AC, please talk us through it.
Okay, 31 seconds left, getting aggressive with the arrows, and I loved this play. I mean, you have to get aggressive on offense. The defensive freeze with the activation of the King Tower is going to be more than enough. And here it is, predictive Skeleton Dragons. The Hog plus the Log will do almost enough. And even the Log was really cool because it forced the Ice Wiz to take even longer to get the shot on the Hog. So it almost was able to run away just in general. And then right here, 4 seconds left, he actually cycles to another Earthquake. It would have come out with the help of the Log. He actually would have won that game. I believe. I think it would have gotten 2 ticks from the Earthquake. So, I mean, he did everything he could.
Yeah, that was, I mean, just really great stuff there from Lucas at the very end. Like you said, the Ice Wiz coming down last second with the help from the King Tower there, the Skelly Drags coming down, all really great. And honestly, surprisingly enough, Lucas just played an Ice Wizard earlier numerous times to defend a Hog Rider. I think it was an Ice Wizard on top of the Hog at the bridge in the left-hand lane with the help of the King Tower. I think it would keep getting only 1 shot, which is a really great interaction to know, right? Because you're getting a +1 trade, you're able to stop a huge offensive push in its tracks, and then you're able to get on offense, which is exactly what you just pointed out in that replay. Lucas doing a great job of piling up at the bridge and then relying on knowing the interactions on his defense. That freeze to stop the Hog so that he could get the Graveyard out instead of just spending more and more on defense. Because you were saying as that game was going on, AC, you kept being like, Lucas he's not being able to get on offense. He needs to get back on offense. And he recognized that probably about the same time as you did, and then changed just enough to end up being our new King of the Hill.
Well, it's because Lucas's deck is so it really looks like it's poorly constructed. I mean, you have to cycle the skeleton dragons up top, so then you're kind of wasting 4 elixirs sometimes, especially going against all these firecracker decks. The Ice Wizard is kind of never the best option. That's why we're not usually seeing it in the meta. But all of them together do synergize well, because you need the fireball bait, and you only need 1 or 2 good pushes. So it's okay if you waste 4 elixir with the skeleton dragons, because they're still applying a little bit of pressure. So it's a poorly constructed deck that, when constructed, it synergizes amazingly. So it's just a weird spot.
Yeah, I mean, even when the game started, we were looking at that deck just going, what is this? This looks like fun. And then I think Lucas really gave us the best showcase possible of how fun that deck can be, how offensive it can be, how great it can be defensively, and then honestly, when to use those defensive freezes, because I think they came out twice in that game, maybe, and it was, at least the one was absolutely game-saving. So RG versus RG, Assaf, bottom of your screen, Lucas, our new king, at the top, and Assaf, one of the biggest names in Clash Royale, without really a huge competitive accomplishment. I mean, he does have his #1 finish on ladder, so I will never take that away. I know how difficult it is to get that #1 spot on ladder, but as we know, getting #1 on ladder doesn't always translate to doing well in competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. He has, I mean, it's just really clear. He has the potential, he has the skill to compete and perform at the top level. It's just something with dual format, or it's something with competitive. It's just one something that he's missing, but it's certainly not missing it in the sense where it looks like he won't be able to improve on it. It's clear that he does have the abilities, and he can improve on it if he works on it.
Yeah, it's not like there's just like a glaring miss there, you know, like, for instance, I'll use Igor as an example because he's a world champion, so he doesn't care. And honestly, once you're a world champion, I feel like once you've got that ring, you can't really talk trash about their game. You know, Udonis Haslem has rings. Igor is one of those guys that when you look at him, you're like, man, his skill is so exceptional, but his coaching, it seems like he's maybe a hard guy to coach, right? So what was it? It's like they got a great coach in Eric Benamou to figure him out and lock him in and kind of just become the Igor that he is. Assaf doesn't really seem to have that thing. A lot of people talk about him maybe being a one-trick, right? They talked about him being like a wall breakers or a drill one-trick, really more so drill than anything else. But I think he's been trying to like steer away from that over the last maybe 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, and actually with those two decks, the one deck that translates really well is actually going to be RG, because it's a bunch of elixir management and recognizing, oh, 4 elixir is out, but it's a very specific 4 elixir, so now I can get aggressive right here. And Assaf, throughout this match, has done a brilliant job of getting aggressive, especially because he only has the Earthquake, and most RG decks are going to be Lightning and Fireball. So he really has to figure out just different avenues of getting damage and not overextending to the point where he's giving up Fireball damage and he's still getting aggressive enough while placing enough troops on the map at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to say that, you know, winning a game like this against someone like Lucas with Royal Giant in both sides is exactly the type of stuff that Assaf needs to do, right? For him to kind of quiet the naysayers and maybe start to establish himself as more than just a drill player, he's got to come out in these competitions, even if it is just, you know, a King of the Hill competition. Again, this is against the best players in the world, and all cards are available, so duels format isn't really part of the conversation. He's got to win in things like this so that we go, oh, wow, you know, yeah, Assaf is a drill one trick, but, you know, I don't know if you saw Royale Masters back in June, but he did crazy stuff with Royal Giant. And I think it's a really great point that you make about, like, RG sharing a lot of those qualities with drill. It's something that I would have never made that gap, paralleled that gap.
Yeah, it's, there's a lot of cool things. I mean, just drill in general and wall breakers in general, it's so micro and macro based that it really will translate to basically any deck. But the similarities between the drill and wall breakers and the RG, it's just there more than you would expect. And so it's always just, I mean, especially because RG just has to be one of the best in the meta. I mean, maybe the best in the meta right now.
It's the best, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it has to be the best archetype in the meta right now. So it's just really nice getting to see him play that. And I mean, throughout that match, he really just dominated. Lucas, in theory, I would assume he has just a matchup because he's got the Lumberjack, he can get aggressive, he has the Fireball, but Assaf just dominated somehow. And I think after the stream, I'll probably just go back and rewatch it just to see what he was doing that was different.
Yeah, I mean, you made I think one of my favorite calls that you made was that it's not about 4 Elixir being out, it's a very specific 4 Elixir being out. And that's really true when you do play Wall Breakers, when you do play Drill. You have to recognize exactly your opponent's cycle, almost more so than their Elixir management, but obviously them going hand in hand is the ideal. And Assaf just doing a really, really good job with that, just really making Lucas play uncomfortably. And right now, a naked Loon at the bridge is met with a lightning, but a freeze comes out and a late tombstone. Assaf has got to be frustrated with that. 1497 as Bob the Rock comes out with Lumber Loon freeze early on.
So instead of cycling the Bar Barrel to get back to the E-Spirit, which potentially he would have had the Elixir for, I was checking the Elixir count to see just how he was going to defend that push. And I believe he was at 3.5 for Elixir, and that might have been able to get it. But instead, he goes in with a Tombstone, and that Tombstone just not played it in time. Bob the Rock dominating right now, but also the way his deck is set up, he will be able to get that tower. I mean, actually, not necessarily, because the Tombstone plus Lightning is going to be a good defense. But I mean, just that early damage right there, and the fact that Bob the Rock has the Inferno Dragon, Assaf has to be feeling so miserable right now.
So Assaf maybe being caught looking a little bit. Breakdown there by AC. So you're saying maybe if he goes Bar Barrel at the bridge, then catches the balloon with an E-Spirit, and then plays the Tombstone, he's able to defend?
No, in that situation, the E-Spirit alone, I believe, would have been able to stop the balloon from getting to the tower. But even if it doesn't, or even if it's late, the freeze would have stopped it from getting a second shot. But instead, without the stun time from the E-Spirit, the balloon was able to get a second shot.
Got it, got it. So a Ocean of Blue here on the right-hand side as that balloon's trying to make its way to tower. Will not happen, though. E-Drag plus balloon, though, again, ensuing as that Inferno Dragon gets raged up. It's a bit of a tank.
And right now,
E-Drag's still tanking.
Yeah, Bob the Rock, a very cool way to set up his push, and it does force out the lightning from Assaf, otherwise the game would have been over. But he was using the Bar Barrel in front of the Loon to catch the aggro from the Phoenix, instead of allowing the Phoenix to get early shots on the balloon. And in turn, it forced out the late lightning that didn't get any value whatsoever, and it allowed Bob the Rock to set up once again and start another push. So that was a really cool play with just an earlier Bar Barrel than most players would have done.
Yeah, I mean, again, Bar Barrel play there is making it so that Assaf has to continue to lightning these balloons. Bar Barrel taking care of that Tombstone over and over. Tombstone being played very high. And Assaf just like caught on his heels, down by 1,500, just trying to find a place to create any sort of offense.
And right here, I mean, just multiple things about this, but first of all, I want to say, I love the way Bob the Rock is playing this Loon deck, and I think this should be game right there. No, I mean, Assaf is just holding on for dear life, not going to be enough. But the other thing is that Bob the Rock, because he is known for his RG gameplay, it's pretty clear that he understands the consequences of these RG decks, because he is just figuring out every single situation. I mean, just the way his pushes are set up, it's just Inferno Dragon Bridge, and you just stay there on the map.
Yeah.
Because he knows his opponent can't stop him.
Yeah, that was really great. And as you were talking about how Bob the Rock knows RG inside and out, not a predictive Inferno, but a hovered Inferno right there at the end of the game with the Lumberjack right behind it on top. RG gets, I think, one shot coming on through, and then another great send from Bob the Rock. I mean, that was one of the best Lumber Loon Freeze games I feel like I've seen, like, period. It was just so in control, always knowing when to play, always knowing when to be hyper aggressive. It felt like he was like, it felt like he'd like convinced Assaf to continue to put those tombstones in barb barrel range because he kept doing it over and over and over. It was just a masterclass.
Yeah, I really love that gameplay from Bob. I totally agree with that, because it's just when you see a push that you can't really understand as a viewer, but it works, it probably means that there's a very specific reason for it, and that is what you should be implementing into your own gameplay. And the way he was setting up those E-Dragons and those Inferno Dragons, but also the fact that the Lightnings were all consistently out of cycle, I mean, it was just, it was so impressive from Bob the Rock with the amazing pressure from him.
And I also noticed that he was very, very happy to leak a ton of Elixir to wait and see what the best response was to his opponent's card. And that's something that like is so obvious to people at the highest level, but it's something that I feel like people at lower levels, they get like anxious, they get nervous. If you have 1,000 HP lead and you're leaking Elixir, it's okay. Like, if your opponent is also sitting there trying to decide what they want to do. If you're leaking Elixir getting back to 10 while you're waiting for them to get to 10 to make a decision, but you have 1,000 HP lead, just ride that lead and then do the best possible response. And right now, those minions are doing an insane amount of work. Bob the Rock hanging out in the skies and happy to do it here in game number 2 for him. Sosa already down a tower and only 1 minute and 7 seconds into gameplay.
I mean, that first push for Bob the Rock was so good for, I mean, 1,000 different reasons. You know, the tower going down is probably the #1 reason. But, I mean, even just the timing of the way his lava popped, his lava ended up popping, and as it was popping, the crown tower died, and then the pups were able to take care of the Skeleton King because the tower was able to take out the lava and introduce the pups to the field. So, I mean, just a perfect situation for Bob the Rock right there.
And in game 1, it was the E-Drag and the Inferno getting insane amounts of value. In game number 2 here, it's the Inferno again, and the minions. The minions just putting in a ton of work here for Bob the Rock.
Yeah, and another good response on defense. Bob the Rock could go in with a lava right here and instead elects to use the zap. So I would assume he's going to try and just defend out. But with this RG at the bridge, okay, there you go. He is going to get slightly aggressive.
Yeah, he's with the RG plus the fireball, he's going to lose his tower there. So he goes lava in front. And I think this should just end up sewing up the game, really. I mean, Sosa did a good job to take that tower.
Yeah,
he's making a case for himself.
Yeah, he's doing a fair job for sure. Actually, significantly better than I would have expected. Inferno Dragon will lock onto the tower though, and that's more like what I expected. Bob the Rock with, again, just a great dominant performance with these heavy decks, and well, heavy control decks, and Inferno Dragon MVP apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Inferno Dragon MVP for sure. Bob the Rock, like, you know, he recognizes what's happening there in the end of that 1 tower game and goes, okay, sure, but I can tell you reached. I can tell you overextended yourself just a bit. So he goes hyper aggressive, keeps the pressure up. Miner goes behind the tower. Inferno in the pocket, plus the minions in the pocket. Bob the Rock doing a great job. 2 games in a row where he goes to the skies, plays Inferno, plays Balloon, doesn't have lava in game 1, goes Lumber Loom Freeze. Game 2 goes Lava Loon, no freeze, and no card evolutions. Back-to-back wins in the skies for Bob the Rock. You love to see it. Let's take a look here at the leaderboard. Surprisingly, it's been 2 guys that have favored the skies in general. Dominic, obviously, a huge Lava Hound player, spent some of his games in Lava Hound, but changed things up a bit. Bob the Rock, only 2 games in the books, but 2 up, 2 down, and both in the skies for him. Our golden ticket winner Pedro leading the charge of a handful of players at 1 win. But AC, we're only a third of the way through our day here in King of the Hill. And remember, guys, we're in Royale Masters. It's the summertime. There's Summer Clash going on, which is a fun party game mode. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we have great events coming your way. We have sudden death mode, heist mode, and then our combined championship, which you could be a part of. And of course, if you'd rather be doing something a little bit more traditional, King of the Hill Royale Masters Edition, what we're here right now doing is something you could be a part of as well. So check out Royale Masters on Discord, Twitter, Instagram, subscribe here on YouTube. And of course, while you're doing all that, we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back with the other 2/3 of our King of the Hill Royale Masters Edition. Some great matches here on King of the Hill Royale Masters Edition. It was probably Dominic and Lucas that had the most competitive match, but it's been Bob the Rock that has had the most impressive matches, at least in my opinion, AC. We ended our break with Bob the Rock coming off of 2 big wins, both of them in the skies, 1 Lumber Loon freeze, the other Lava Loon with minor, no card evolutions, and really no looking back. He's just been kind of just all go, 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 straight domination.
So, my favorite thing about a competitive tank player, which is what I would consider Bob the Rock, because even with his Lumber Loon, his Lava gameplay, both of those are going to be at least sort of tank control kind of decks. And then he's obviously incredible with RG. So, at the beginning stages of any kind of tournament, in the first couple rounds, a lot of these players are warming up. It doesn't matter if you're playing ladder games before, if you're using the Magic Archer Wallbreakers 2.1 Elixir Cycle deck in order to warm up. It's hard to play well at the beginning. So when you're a tank player, you just kind of, I mean, there's not a lot of micro involved necessarily, and so you get to just play your game at the start. So it doesn't even shock me that Bob the Rock is starting off well in this tournament.
That's a really great point that you make there. You know, there's nerves, there's all those things, and sometimes when we're talking about like lesser players going up against better players, not saying that that's the situation, but just in the past when we've had that conversation, we've said a couple things. One of them is to go to your comfort deck, right? That seems pretty obvious, and maybe it's almost too obvious, so you don't want to do that. And then the other thing is play something a little bit heavier, something that's a little bit less micro-reliant, doesn't allow you to make as many mistakes. That being said, when you make big mistakes, they're harder to recover from, so it's a bit of a catch-22. But Bob the Rock may be knowing his lane and staying in it and really succeeding as we head into his 3rd game here against Golden Ticket winner Pedro. Pedro having a okay run today. He's got 1 win.
Yeah, there you go. It's solid, but I don't think he's done, especially because, I mean, this is going to be one of the few tournaments where none of your competitors are named Muhammad Light. So this actually is, there seems to be a little bit more pressure in this tournament because you do want to lock up a better record. You do want to get at least 3, 4, 5 wins in this kind of tournament because there might not be another opportunity for who knows how long.
Yeah, Muhammad Light has just been on a run this year. It doesn't seem like anyone can stop him. Really was just that one tournament that we were talking about earlier that Lucas won. Was one of the few competitive events that Muhammad Light has been a part of in 2023 and has not taken home the gold, has not hoisted the trophy. And honestly, I'm upset that we've been talking as much as we have because I maybe am looking at a new Mortar deck in the meta, looking like a very similar composition of what we've seen in the past. However, instead of, you know, Skeleton King or a Mighty Miner or Valkyrie, we're seeing Evolved Barbarians, which will do a really great job catching buildings like we just saw.
Yeah, and so Bob the Rock is actually going to be using the same deck that Lucas had success with earlier.
Yeah.
And so we are going to see the freeze coming out from Bob the Rock. But it really comes down to, as soon as I say something incredible about a player, they make a massive error. Bob the Rock going with the Inferno Tower at the bridge, which is kind of okay, but he played it late and the Mortar locked on, and then the bars were placed in front. And the entire answer should have been Bob the Rock should have played the Inferno Tower in the middle of the map because he knew his opponent would be able to use the barb in order to take the aggro from the Inferno Tower. And with that one mistake, it's game.
And I love that you're pointing that out because it's not really a situation of like, is it really that horrible of a play? But you always have to think about risk factor when you're playing Clash Royale. And it's, you know, we've had moments talking, I've asked Eric about it, and like building placement with your pros. Like, do you tell them to play the best spot or the safest spot? He always says the safest spot. Even though the best spot might be one tile to the left or the right, the safest spot is always going to pull that building to the center. And when I've watched Muhammad Light play, when I've watched Morton play, sometimes when they're dealing with Expos at the bridge or Mortars at the bridge, they'll say, I'm going to play my defensive building in the center to give myself more time to adjust and recuperate, essentially. Problem with Bob's play is while it is a good play if it locks on the Mortar, it is a game-losing play if it's stopped, right? And that's why what you're saying, AC, is really important. If you don't have a 100% response, then play the safest one. So give yourself that Inferno Tower over the center. That'll lock the mortar. Then your opponent will either decide, do I just let this push die? Do I let the mortar die? Or do I try to back it up with something else? And then if they back it up with something else, then that's usually when you can punish them if you're playing against mortar. I know, because I've done that thing where I'll play a mortar at the bridge, and then I'll immediately try to defend it, and then my opponent just plays something low, and I'm like, well, there goes 7, 8, 9 elixir, and now I'm in trouble. So I love that you point that out, AC, because it really was that small thing that made Bob the Rock lose the game. Because what did he do then? He felt kind of desperate, and he got super aggressive on offense. Easy cleanup.
Yeah, and I mean, it was an offensive push that had no chance for success. A musketeer off to the side and goblins on top of the graveyard, and your Mighty Miner graveyard freeze push will get 300 damage. Like, yeah. It was just clearly not the right play, and it was clearly, it was just clear. He wasn't in the right headspace after making that one error.
And that's a 12 elixir send like you're talking about, AC. Very easily defended. And then I think he even sent arrows in at the end on top of it, right? So that becomes a 15 elixir push that, like you said, gets a few hundred HPs. So Bob the Rock going to sit down, maybe think a little bit about that last game, as Pedro now the new king of the hill, and Umaton back out.
Mighty Miner from Umaton that will be cleaned up by the Ghost and the Skeletons, and we will see a King Tower activation right there. So great situation for Pedro. Towers at 2734 and 2579, but a Ghost on the board receiving a little bit of pressure, and it gets the third shot. So great start for Pedro.
Yeah, I mean, about as good as it can get. A King Tower activation, damage in both lanes. And Umaton going, all right, let's try to reset here, as that Firecracker does not get any damage and misses the log on top of the Barb Barrel. Gets the damage on the Princess Tower, but then has to spend extra elixir.
And so we already saw, I believe, okay, wow. Okay, he's just going to go a full send. Forget what we saw in previous matchups. It depends on how he can stop this. E-Spirit, will it be able to reach the Mighty Miner? It does. So a great spot for Pedro, and a ton of damage, especially with the Phoenix on top of the tower.
Yeah, Phoenix spawns right on top of that tower, and while the Firecracker really saved the game there for Umaton, she does still have a bit of a slow attack speed, so while she was there defensively, damage done by a lot, 1100 HP in favor of Pedro, and then a really nice high skeletons to distract the guards so the Fisherman can get a pull on that Hog, plus the Ghost, plus the Phoenix for about as clean of a defense as you can get, AC.
Yeah, and I really like this from Pedro. He's just going to forget about using the RG from now on. He wants to stop everything at the bridge, potentially, which is exactly what he's going to do. No hog shots whatsoever, and he's going to fireball out. These players are so quick to understand, okay, we have X amount of time, and there's X amount of damage I need to get on top of the tower. I go spell cycle. They make those decisions so quickly.
And, you know, I know that feeling of being in that spot when you're going up against a good player and they've gotten just enough damage on you to start spell cycling you. It is incredibly demoralizing, because all you could do then is just throw stuff at the wall and hope they make a mistake, which is exactly what we saw Umaton do at that point. Once we saw the spell cycle come out from Pedro, you started to see Umaton pour every drop of elixir he had in the left-hand lane to no avail. I think out of all of, from the very first fireballs that we saw cycled, I think we saw maybe 4 pushes from Umaton and 1 hog hit that whole time. So very, very well defended and very great decision making from Pedro. I mean, the more that I see from Pedro, the more excited I am to see him at World Finals.
Yeah, he is an exciting player, and especially since he's so new to the scene, he's always going to be one of those players that, I mean, you are just at the edge of your seat trying to see what he's going to be able to pull off. Right now, I mean, that was the way he set up those defenses. There was that one push in specifically where it was the Hog Guards push, which obviously isn't the strongest push whatsoever, but it required him to go Fisherman, Skeletons high, E-Spirit plus Ghost in order to stop him from getting a shot. And then it started a counter push where he was able to continue to cycle fireballs. I mean, there was a lot of different ways to mess it up. And it was basically, I believe it was a 9 for 11 in terms of elixir, where he ended up spending an extra 2 than his opponent. But everything was coming down the field again, so he was able to get the fireball off. So, I mean, just brilliant defenses and a lot of variety in the way he was setting up his defenses. There was a couple times where he just did Phoenix at the bridge, just because, I mean, if Firecracker's your only card, you can just spam the Phoenixes at the bridge, and they will get a ton of value.
So back around to the Canadian sweep at the bottom of the screen here, trying to take a win off of Pedro after playing a very, very nice game against Umaton. And sweep going to what looks like a bit of an overwhelm heal spirit deck. Usually have E-barbs in this deck and things like Bandit, obviously, as you can see there. And we'll see if sweep decides to go traditional, which is very unlike him.
Inferno Tower placement is going to allow the Ghost to go into the middle, where he doesn't need to overspend on defense with an Ice Spirit or Goblins or anything like that. So really like the placement right there. And with the help of the log, it will clean it up, but he does not have enough elixir, and I believe no log or Goblins.
No, I mean, that was a really great push. I don't love this Bandit. It felt like it was a little bit too late. Your opponent has enough elixir, he has Goblins back in cycle, but still, it's a pressure play. Does have 1 elixir up on his opponent. Now it looks like they're pretty even now, but a lot more damage does sweep have. 1690 is Pedro's lowest tower to 2582 after a really nice, aggressive battle ram push with Archer Queen in tow, and these Ice Spirit interactions with the Firecracker are devastating, man.
So with that, wow, gets another shot right there, so pretty massive. And I would be absolutely sick if he decided to just go Earthquake cycle for the rest of the game. I don't think he's going to, but the way his deck is set up, sweep, if Pedro plays perfectly, he will win. It's just whether or not sweep can pull off the maneuvers to force his opponent to not play perfect.
Yeah, and that's why these decks are so difficult. You have to be so good with them, because if your opponent even gets a slight lead, or even if they're just down by a few hundred HP and they have a spell, then you just find yourself in a really, really tough spot. So we'll see what Sweep can do here against Pedro, who has a lot of really great responses. But a big push coming down both lanes here. Can Pedro deal with all of it? That Heal Spirit jumping is huge, and the Magic Archer on top of the Firecracker. And Sweep does what we were just curious about. Well, he answered that question.
And right there, because of the pressure from the Magic Archer, it forced out Goblins from Pedro. And him using those Goblins is actually going to be insanely massive for the next push as well. And really, I think it comes down to Pedro's Firecracker gameplay as the reason why he would lose this. Because that is the second time that an Evo'd Firecracker has been sniped from a Magic Archer, and you have to get more value from it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to protect it. You've got to log that Magic Archer. You've got to Ice Spirit that Magic Archer. You've got to do whatever you can to protect that Firecracker, because you really need it. But right now, Sweep, not enough elixir in the tank. Does take a couple, I think maybe 2 hog shots, might have just been 1, as Evo'd Barbs come down the lane. Now going to be tanking for that Archer Queen is a Bandit plus Heal Spirit opposite lane. Love to see it.
Oh my goodness, he's forced to, I believe that was a Firecracker, and that's going to be game over. I mean, it was erased off the map so quickly that I only saw, I believe it was a timer. I don't even know what I saw on the board right there.
Yeah, that was a great game played by Sweep. Kept making his opponent play uncomfortably, kept making him overspend. And then obviously with decks like that, you have to keep up the dual lane pressure. But every now and then you'll watch players just kind of get caught. They get pigeonholed into one lane. They want to stay to it. There's too much damage on there. The time is ticking down. But Sweep did a great job. Look, I'm going to keep up the dual lane pressure. Even if I know I'm going to take the left-hand tower, I have to at least give enough attention to that right-hand side to make my opponent continue to make mistakes, to make them continue to play Goblins out of cycle, or like we were looking at on the game there, is just put that Firecracker in bad spots. Let's take a look here at the last 30 seconds of the game. AC, I mean, Sweep pretty much in control, but this is where things were really, really bad for Pedro.
Yeah, I mean, he's always in a position where he has more elixir than his opponent. Right there, Pedro getting aggressive, which isn't the end of the world, but you really have 0.5 elixir on defense, and so you know your opponent is just going to be able to go all in, and it was just too much for him. This is one of the only games that I've seen from Pedro where it felt like he was making a lot of mistakes. I feel like he should have just been much less aggressive, just use the logs and earthquakes on top of the magic archer, and then set up for a push eventually. And he just kept trying to go in.
Well, you know, AC being a pro, there's a lot of different layers to it, right? You run into the Mohammed Lights of the world, you run into people like Lucas, who is a very good player, very traditionally living in the meta. You run into people like Sweep, who you will play 1,000 games of Clash Royale and not run into one other competitor that is exactly like Sweep. And yeah, there's layers to this thing, man. You got to be able to beat the Mortons and the Moes of the world, and the Sweeps thrown in for a little bit of extra seasoning, as Sweep having a lot of trouble with Dominic's bait deck. That Mighty Miner had enough HP for like 6 Mighty Miners. I don't understand how it was still on the board, how it got that much damage in the right-hand lane, and then still got more damage in the left. Tough stuff here for Sweep early on.
At one point, I said it was one more Crown Tower shot away, and then it was 4. So yeah, the Mighty Miner put in so much work. Will the Princess get the second shot? No, actually a very quick response from Sweep to not allow the Princess to get a second shot using the Dark Prince in response to the Princess at the bridge.
Yeah, that's probably a bit of a saving grace there for Sweep, and now we're going to lose that tower. Just trying to make his opponent spend a little bit more elixir on it. Well, goes Princess and Dark Goblin, a total of 6 spent, with the Dark Prince only a -2, plus you get the tower, so good job there by Dominic to stay hyper aggressive. And that's the name of the game for him here. I mean, barrel plus wall breakers again. Mighty Miner working down the opposite lane and can use its ability and get on top of the tower, so Sweep has to defend that as well. And just a tough spot.
Well, and he has, I mean, it's really just how good are the barbs at this point, because he doesn't have a building, so it's super difficult for him to defend these. And then with the NATO on offense for Sweep, that's going to be a lot of potential right there. And I mean, he will get that tower. Mighty Miner not going to activate. Yes, it does activate.
Oh, wow. But Mighty Miner goes to the back, and it's on the tower, man.
And he just used the NATO. I was trying to figure out why he didn't try and use that. And yeah, I mean, we've just not able to do anything. Dominic, constant pressure, and I believe that's his 3rd win of the day, too. So, I mean, just a great start for him.
I don't know if we do have the capabilities to pull the beginning of that game, but I'd love to see it again, just because it felt like Dominic's very first couple pushes just all came together to put Sweep just already in the losers category. Like, it felt like there was no way to come back. You're playing E-Giant, you've already lost basically 1.5 towers, and you haven't even created any offense yet, so your opponent can just continue to be hyper aggressive, overspend on defense, and then turn that defense into offense. There was just that one good NATO push, right? And that was it. That was all that Sweep had the whole game.
Yeah, and I with that game overall, what Dominic did that was really impressive for me, I mean, obviously with bait you want to continue to swap lanes and create constant pressure, but with his deck specifically, you need even more pressure because you have no building, you have no big spell, and I believe he might have had no spell in general besides the Goblin Barrel, if you want to call that. So his pressure needs to be even more impressive than usual bait decks. So it was very impressive that Dominic was able to get as much damage early on, because his deck, while good, can put him in some bad spots.
Yeah, it looked like Dominic only had arrows, which really had no value in that last game when you look at the cards that were available. You know, you have Mother Witch, Archer Queen, and Dark Prince, so arrows just not really going to have much to say in that game, as Lucas tries his hat in the ring here against Dominic. It was a great game between the two of them last time. Lucas was able to take the win. We'll see if that's going to be the case here. Wall Breakers going up against a Magic Archer. Again, another overwhelm-ish deck. This deck was really popular a while ago, then got super quiet with all the changes in champions and adding in card evolutions.
One of the Wall Breakers, it does not make it to the tower. So Dominic, I mean, it's very cool to see the Barbs back in the meta. It's
yeah.
I do love the Evo for it. While I think that the Evo for the RG and the Firecracker are too strong generally, I believe that the Barbs do not feel unhealthy just yet. It feels like they're very strong, but it was kind of like when the E-Barbs got introduced, I mean, once they got properly buffed, where you want them in your deck, but it's not really a problem for the meta.
Yeah, I agree. It does feel like after the 4 cards have come through, I mean, I think Lucas actually said a pretty good thing where it was just like, honestly, it's like you take one of the best cycle cards in the games in the Skellies, but some reason their evolution just didn't work out. One of the most annoying cards in the game to deal with in the Firecracker. You have the strongest win condition in the game in the Royal Giant, and then the Barbs. A card that like wasn't super dominant in the meta, wasn't really popular in a lot of decks, but I think with the evolution, like you said, and like he said, I think they're kind of perfect. I think they're kind of where they're supposed to be. So we'll see if the other cards around it get adjusted or if the Barbs end up living where they are forever. As Lucas lets out a bit of a hot goblin, maybe getting a little bit high on his defense there. Skeleton Dragon's getting a little bit more value than he would have liked, but still very even game. 23-41 to 22-14 after that Firecracker shots come in, now down to 1973.
Evoed Barbs are going to take the aggro from the Inferno Tower. Skeleton Dragons over the middle, so a lot of pressure, but none of it too scary just yet. Should be cleaned up fairly nicely by the Mighty Miner, especially when you have, especially when you have the Miner, but at the same time, that's too much elixir to spend on defense. I don't think the Miner was necessary in that spot.
Nice NATO there from Dominic to just create a lot of damage against Lucas here as 2 Firecrackers trying to make something happen for him. On the left-hand side of your screen, a Barb Barrel comes out, and Barb Barrel and Skeleton Dragons, I've noticed, have become a lot more popular over the last week or so since the evolutions have been introduced. Wondering why the Skeleton Dragons. The Barb Barrel makes sense, as it's a great way to get on top of that Evolved Firecracker and, you know, get in there. The Barb stays alive, but I don't really quite understand the Skeleton Dragons yet.
Yeah, that's a good question right there, and right there, I mean, Barbs, even though it's not the Evoed version, it's going to do more than enough. The Barbs do, I mean, while it is necessary for them to become meta, they're still just a good card overall, so they clean it up very, very nicely. And with 55 seconds left, 1307 to 852, 500 HP separating the 2 players. But Lucas's deck, I mean, he can provide some really, really good pressure. And Dominic, it just doesn't look like he can get through this defense.
Magic Archer's lining up, though, putting in some good work. And this deck, actually, Morton did a video on. It wasn't this exact deck. I think he used Bomb Tower instead of Inferno Tower for the bottom of your screen. But this kind of no big spell, use your Evolved Firecracker as a big spell deck has been pretty successful. As we see Lucas trying to defend, that Magic Archer at the bridge is giving him trouble. The Wall Breaker does connect. Magic Archer will not get a shot. RG comes down, World Ghost comes down right at the bridge as an Evolved Fire at the bridge for Lucas is caught by a Golden Knight. Miner on the tower. Wow. Magic Archer up high. Miner might be able to put in enough work. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
I do not know how Lucas stopped any damage coming in on that right-hand side.
Yeah, if it's possible, I would love a replay of the final 20 seconds because somehow I looked away and Lucas lost 800 HP on his tower. And then at the same time, he did everything right in the final 7 seconds. And I mean, perfect timing with the log, the Magic Archer. I mean, he even used the bats perfectly against the Magic Archer where the Magic Archer didn't get any shots on tower. Like that was a tough spot for him. And it kind of feels like you're blindly placing the bats in those situations, but it actually felt like a purpose for Lucas. And I say that because it worked out. Who knows if he actually had a purpose? but it did work out for him. So that was a great end for Lucas.
Those late game aggressive Magic Archer NATOs can be so difficult to deal with, especially when you only have squishy bait cards, right? When you only have the goblins, when you only have the bats, it becomes so tough. Lucas did a really good job of always using that Mighty Miner ability anytime it was going to give that Magic Archer an opportunity to line up. That's something that he was really good about. And the last thing was that late game, and we got a replay, go ahead and throw it up as I'll just talk through it. The last thing is that the miners kept seeking out those Magic Archers. AC 585, 852. Go.
Okay, Drill is going to come down. No login cycle, so he has to find a different way to play it. 200 HP, that's going to be a lot of pressure, but the bats get played perfectly. Doesn't have to worry about that. 12 seconds left. Drill plus Ghost. What are you going to respond with? He responds with offensive pressure from the Firecracker. The Drill plus the Goblins are going to be able to clean up everything, and because of the offensive pressure from the Firecracker, he now can't get he can't do the Magic Archer at the bridge.
Yes.
Can't use the Golden Knight NATO push that he wanted to pull off, and Lucas steals that game.
That is such a great replay. So glad we got that replay, because exactly what you're saying, AC, that like naked Firecracker at the bridge, the evolved one, baits out the Golden Knight, but then also, like you said, because of the pressure from the Miner and the Firecracker still there, the Magic Archer has to come down where? The opposite lane, at the bridge, as cannon fodder for that Firecracker, because the Mighty Miner was played right in the center of the lane on the right-hand side. I mean, the game is sewn up right there. If you go Magic Archer at the bridge, I think Dominic probably wins. I think. I'm not 100% sure because timing-wise on that Firecracker, but that's the second time, or at least, I mean, who knows how many times it is, but it's at least the second time this week where you and I have talked about creating just enough offensive pressure to make it so your opponent cannot close the game out, and that's exactly what Lucas did.
I mean, that is just such a fun ending, because that's one of those endings where you think about, if you're the player that lost, you think about it for the rest of your day, for potentially the rest of your week, because it's like, oh, well, if I didn't go Drill, I would have had enough to defend, and then I would have been able to use the Magic Archer on offense, because with the Ghost going down the field, you need a response, obviously, and if you know your opponent is going to respond, well, then the Magic Archer should be in cycle. You shouldn't use the Drill. You should have used the Magic Archer as the offensive win condition to steal away that game. So that could be something that he's thinking about for a long, long time.
Oh, man, those last second losses, they hurt oh so bad, because that Lumberjack does distract Firecracker. But Firecracker resets. Lumberjack will need a response. It's a nice King Tower activation there for Assaf after good damage done on the right-hand side with the Mighty Miner bomb going off as well. So Lucas off to a very rough start against a basically untouched Assaf.
Right there, King Tower will actually lock onto the egg, so he's not going to have to worry about that. And Lucas using the arrows, so both players just kind of resetting right there, 150 left. Lucas has done basically nothing, and Assaf has done basically everything. 1,000 HP separating the two players.
Yeah, and a King Tower activation to boot as a Miner comes in and separates them just by a bit more. 29-41, 16-39. And you can numbers at the moment.
And you can already see Lucas approaching the matchup differently because of the damage he's given up. Instead of defending the Miner with the Lumberjack, he instead just allows the Miner to get chip damage, and he places the Lumberjack in the back in order for him to set up a real push. So, I mean, you can already just see the differences in how he approaches it.
Nice job by Lucas there to completely stop the attempt of Assaf, we'll say, to keep that Firecracker alive as a Miner comes back down the lane. Fisherman does pull it away, 15-41 to still that same 29-41 as Lucas takes more damage as the poison comes down. An evolved Royal Giant cycle down that left-hand lane. Excuse me, a regular Royal Giant cycle down that left-hand lane, but it does obviously have evolution capabilities.
With the way the game is set up, it now just kind of makes me laugh because I know it's the right play, but I mean, he's done it actually, and I didn't even recognize that neither of the towers were really touched for Lucas, but it just feels like the first RG is never actually a real RG. Like you're just using it to pressure to set up for the second one. And so it's just this weird spot where it doesn't really feel like offensive pressure, but if you actually approach it that way, well, then your tower's going down, so you can't actually do that.
Yeah, I mean, that is the most interesting thing about the RG as a card evolution is it's the only one that costs so much and is just strictly a tower-seeking win condition that doesn't really offer any defensive capabilities other than a kite. So, yeah, it is fascinating, whereas, like, you cycle Firecrackers, and who knows what she can do. Whereas, like, what you're talking about, AC, that very first RG that just needs to get out so that you can get the evolved one on the board does very, very little. And I will say this because I was looking at Assaf's Twitter before we started. Assaf's Mighty Miner gameplay against RG is really exceptional. He actually has a really cool clip on his Twitter right now. But while I'm talking about how good it is for him, he is definitely getting overwhelmed here. A very low Mighty Miner gets pulled late by the Fish Boy, and then an E-Spirit jumps on top of it while the RG is already on tower. And this is game over. There's still way too much red on that side of the board, and Lucas is just going to keep piling it up.
Yeah, at the beginning of this push, Lucas, he said he did one emote, and it was just, it was some character.
That laughing king, right?
Yeah, with the sunglasses. And at the time, I thought it was funny, and now I find it hilarious. That I mean, he just needed one push.
I don't exactly even understand like what it was. I mean, and that's why Lucas is Lucas, is he was able to look at what, like the way that Assaf had been playing and just go, all right, man, cool, keep doing you. Yeah, you can have my pawns. I'm about to checkmate you.
This is the first time in 4 years where I actually want to, this is the first time ever where I want to set up a practice in Clash Royale. So that way I can just learn the interactions, because I mean, he only has Fireball and arrows, so any Inferno Tower, in theory, should be able to lock the RG up. But this is the 17th time today that I've seen an Inferno Tower not be able to do anything against those evoed RGs. And then with the rest of his deck, he was getting aggressive. The Lumberjacks, the Fishermans were always getting the pull on top of the Mighty Miner. And then there was one little spot where he had the Mighty Miner on defense. He tornadoed the push back, but he actually tornadoed it one tile too high. So the Mighty Miner, so the Mighty Miner reset on top of the RG, and then the push was able to continue through. So these pushes are so tough to stop, and I don't even know what's happening, like what interactions should even happen.
I know, I was like looking at that game and I was trying to figure out like towards the end, because Assaf did seem like he was having control, but it like we saw, Lucas never really seemed like he was worried about losing that game. And it, like, you know, you look at this matchup on paper and there's not a lot of examples of it, right? There's just like a couple odds and ends in here with Lucas's deck, I think making it not firmly in the meta with Cage and with Lumberjack. But it feels like it was actually supposed to be kind of in Assaf's favor. But for some reason, Lucas was just able to figure it out, pick it apart. And it's probably one of those things where, like, at the highest level, you know, when you go to Royale API, yeah, well, the matchup is actually in favor of Assaf. But then you talk to Jebas, who loves to do this. He goes, well, it's actually in Lucas's favor because of blank. Whatever that one thing is, it's enough. But I think a big part of it in this one was just Lucas played that really, really well. And the Firecrackers, the evolved Firecrackers, were not able to get the value that you need for them to win.
I think that might be my favorite thing about this game. When Royale API or something, and it's no mistake to Royale API because it's just presenting the data, but the matchup says 75-25. Oh yeah, you know, technically you're not supposed to be able to win that whatsoever. But then you ask the pros and it's like, oh, well, that's because the normal player gets too aggressive or doesn't get aggressive enough or doesn't know how to properly get the right Golden Knight NATO or whatever it is. And so then the pros are telling you, oh, it's actually 100-0. And it's so hilarious that those two things are just, that's the way Clash Royale is.
And one of the interactions that I found really nice log there by Sosa that takes care of the Firecracker. What I was just about to say, though, is one of the things that I've been loving to see is the cleanup of interactions in general, of keeping Firecrackers alive with logs and ice spirits in the distance and skeletons, things like that, to just create enough space, because she's become so important to keep on the board. You're starting to see players really overspend to protect her. And yeah, it's something that we've seen for the Magic Archer and the Princess for a very long time. Now Firecracker getting the same treatment.
Wow, Skeleton's over the middle, taking care of the aggro of the Ghost. Still gonna need another response and gonna choose to use the Firecracker as that response. So just, I mean, I understand it, but definitely an odd situation where you don't really want to have to waste your Evo like that.
Yeah, the Royal Ghost plus Log has done a great job 2 times in a row for Sosa to take care of those Firecrackers of Lucas, 1 evolved and 1 regular. Lucas down by just a little bit.
Earthquake cycling from Lucas still hasn't shown his win condition, and you'd have to assume it'd be Hog, but at the same time, if it's Hog, we usually have seen it 7 or 8 times, and there you go, it is going to be Hog. Okay, that does make sense, but surprised to see it not be on the board until
maybe
now.
He was just waiting, right? Waiting for that fisherman to just be in the wrong place.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like his cycle has been incorrect this entire game, so
Yeah.
It's shocking, but it's not too shocking.
Royal Ghost gets a shot on that tower, so the Royal Giant can kind of come through. Only gets 1 shot, though, does the evolved Royal Giant, but look at that Phoenix on the left-hand side. Bunch of damage in. 1731, the lowest tower on the board. 2166, the lowest tower for Sosa.
Wow, and that Hog plus Firecracker will tie the game up completely. So Ice Spirit is gonna take the Royal Ghost for a walk. But the problem is he doesn't have a ton of elixir. This Firecracker or this Mighty Miner plus Log plus Ice Spirit will be more than enough, specifically because it's not the Evoed RG.
Yeah, and that's really the biggest part of it there, because Lucas did miss a surround on the Skellies for that Royal Ghost, which just was 1 elixir thrown away, but the Mighty Miner was able to put in just enough. Like you said, not the evolved RG, so the E-Spirit plus the Royal Ghost was not enough. Now the evolved RG starting to work down that left-hand lane as Lucas sends another Hog plus Log in. Fish Boy there to catch, and it will get it in time to stop all hits. No, wow, does get a hit there, even with the Phoenix's help.
Wow, and that Log getting both of the Firecrackers, taking 1 out completely while also damaging the other one. But the problem with Log is that you need 2 of them to stop these Firecrackers, and it just feels like there's always a Firecracker on the board, and Sosa just cannot stop that.
Yeah, second Firecracker down. The splash doesn't come on through, though, but now it will, as that Firecracker splash damage putting in work. 536, the lowest tower on the board. Now Lucas very much in control as a Fish Boy does come out, gets distracted by a Firecracker for a second. So Skellies come down to prevent any hits. 2 RGs down. Now Lucas is trying to play defense.
Well, this is incredible because if he gets the Fireball out, no, he doesn't go with the Fireball, and that's going to clean it up nicely. No Fireball in time, and what could have been the scariest push I've ever seen ends up getting stopped for almost nothing. So this is 1 last push, but I believe it's not going to do anything. And Lucas, I mean, some really difficult spots that were cleaned up with no damage.
I mean, Lucas did an incredible job of, this is one of those scenarios where I would actually love to see that post-game graphics of how many times he got a Firecracker down, because, you know, obviously doing a good job of cycling things to get those Firecrackers down, but also just having the Mighty Miner down on the board so that it makes it that 3-card cycle. Then those Firecrackers are literally always just a couple cards away, just a couple elixir away, and that's, I mean, Lucas played that game perfectly, right? You saw a lot of damage come in early on. It felt like he was on his back foot for a very, very long time. But, you know, usually a deck that starts to struggle a little bit more in double and triple elixir and Hog EQ with Firecracker, as you can see here, excels because of that cycle, that 3-card cycle. Those Firecrackers are just relentless.
Yeah, you're right. And, I mean, he really struggled in single elixir. He was in constant... just constant agony, really, with how his cycle was, where he had to waste that evolved Firecracker at one point, and then again, the perfect Log timing from his opponent. So, I mean, it really was, as soon as double and triple elixir hit, that's actually when the game flipped, and that's never what we see in that matchup. Yeah,
it is really surprising to see a deck that is really kind of favors single elixir, and then you honestly want to win in double. You really do. You don't usually want to get to triple with that deck, but with that 3-card cycle, with the ability of the Mighty Miner, and then just being able to go Hog Rider Firecracker at the bridge and always put your opponent in a very tough spot is a really kind of scary thing for anyone that hates playing against Hog EQ players, because there's very little you can do. I mean, if you go Hog EQ at the bridge, if you're hovering a fireball, Hog Firecracker, if you're hovering a fireball, but that feels like a very, very low probability. So I guess Barb Barrel, but then you got to worry about, I don't know. As you can see right there, as I'm trying to figure it out, that's clearly what Lucas's opponent was trying to do that entire game. Yeah, Evolve Firecracker. She's the truth.
Yeah. It's one of those situations. Well, I mean, the first situation is I'm just glad I'm not a pro anymore, where I don't have to worry about these kind of balances. But as a viewer, as a spectator, I mean, it is really cool to see how fresh everything feels again, just because of these evolutions. Now, the problem is it's very fresh, but we're still seeing, but it's just like instantly becoming, okay, these are the best 3 decks, 4 decks. So we're gonna have to see what happens with everything. And then it will be interesting to see if they do want to touch up on one of these evolutions specifically. Actually, not even specifically, just really if they want to balance the Firecracker and RG, especially, you know, pre 3-month balance changes.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably the most likely change that needs to happen. And then I also think that maybe a buff to the Skellies, right? If they're going to be an evolved card, they need to be viable. And it feels like they've been incredibly unviable as a missed Ice Spirit on the bats, a missed King Tower activation, and a couple wall breakers come through. Wow. Bob the Rock already in a lot of trouble early on.
And a Firecracker shot. I mean, Luke is... as much damage, I mean, it's almost like Bob the Rock didn't defend it, just because of how many troops actually made it to the tower and just all the value they received. Poison coming down from Lucas, and that will be a mortar locking onto the tower. So Bob the Rock doing what he can to bring himself back into the game.
Yeah, the mortar will get 2 nice shots in, 24-22 to 20-44, but can't forget that Lucas did get damage on the other side as well, 22-44. So Bob the Rock going back to a deck that we saw be played earlier, and I think it lost as well. So we'll see if it can pick up a win here. Always happy to see a new mortar deck.
Going in with the log low, and the problem with that is that you don't get the chip damage on top of the tower. There we go. That's going to be the correct Ice Spirit placement. The previous one certainly messed it up quite a bit, and that Firecracker will get the power down to 1849 and force out a defensive mortar.
Yeah, this defensive mortar going to get taken off the board. Does get a King Tower activation, but damage done on both sides in terms of getting that King Tower damage and getting Princess Tower damage. Wow. As Lucas just goes Wall Breaker's log, but his opponent has to spend about the same amount of elixir to defend it.
And so I was watching the right Crown Tower the entire time when that Firecracker was shooting across the map to that mortar, and it got the right tower for 380 HP. That's how much it got with that evolved Firecracker.
Yeah, that splash damage is no joke, like especially the part that lives on the ground. As Lucas has been incredibly relentless with this deck. I mean, it's very similar to the deck that he played before. It's just they got a spell this time instead of not having a spell.
And there we go, much cleaner interactions from Bob the Rock, but he is coming out with a good game at the same time. So it looks like all he wanted to do was actually just get a good defense, know that he can do it, and he still thinks, yeah, he's still the game is over though.
So Bob the Rock not giving things up yet, but does know it's probably pretty much sewn up as some good minor damage comes in on that right-hand side. 1307 down all the way below 700. With those ticks to the poison, going to bring it just above 602 is Bob the Rock, but an evolved Firecracker baits out the mortar and then does get splash damage still on the tower. Absolutely crazy within poison range. GG. Well played. Lucas picking up another win.
Yeah, and Lucas's deck, I want to know the last card, but that is an ultra powerful deck. I mean, just constant pressure. The poison is always going to be very nice. It's always going to give you a chance against any kind of matchup just because of how defensive it is. At the same time, I mean, the way Lucas, Muhammad Light, Assaf is another one. The way these guys play those minor poisons, the minor poison mortars. It is so cool. I mean, they just constant pressure, and Lapicati is the one who started it all. I want to give a shout out to my former teammate, but the constant pressure with these kind of cycle decks, it's just there's 80 different routes to the tower, and they will go through all 80 of those throughout the game.
Yeah, and they'll change it up every single time. They'll defend very, very cheaply and then somehow turn it into an offensive push. I mean, that's really how that started, right? It was just like before you knew it, you blinked and Bob the Rock was missing like 1,000 HP in both lanes. Yeah. Like you said, Lucas being relentless is one of the most impressive things when the pros play the deck, because I feel like when I play those decks and I play even half as aggressive as they do, I just don't have enough elixir in the tank. Yep. So Lucas picking up a big win there. He's on a 4-game win streak, and he's doing it with all different archetypes. So we're taking a look here at our leaderboard. Lucas up top, 5 wins after a 4-win streak, 575 in the bank. Dominic right behind him, and when you look at the people that are up top, not a big surprise. 2 world finalists, a golden ticket holder, Bob the Rock, who was able to pick up 2 wins in the skies, but then has been quiet since then. Everyone else at 1 win, except for Sosa / Soki, who's still looking to find their first win of the day. Sweep and Assaf been a little bit quiet. And of course, Umaton, the somewhat unknown for us, has 1 win, looking for that second one, but only 1 goose egg out there in the world. As we're going to take our last break of the day, another 8 matches coming your way. Can Lucas stay on top? He's been doing a great job. We'll see if he keeps changing things up or if someone else can become our king of the hill. We'll be back in just a minute. All right, we are getting into the last leg of our Royale Masters King of the Hill edition, and I saw a handful of people in the chat asking some questions, and I'm going to answer those questions for you. First of all, if you're asking if card evolutions are allowed, then maybe you haven't been watching, but they are very much allowed. Anyone can use card evolutions as long as you own them. And the other thing is, how do you get involved? Well, that's the coolest thing about Royale Masters, and basically with Clash Royale in general right now, is it is the era of everyone, whether it's with ESL Snapdragon, whether it's with Royale Masters, GKR, or CRL, the biggest league out there. Anyone can join in. And for Royale Masters, the way to do it is just follow them on Twitter, follow them on Discord. Their Discord is incredible. They are so communicative in there. They let you know when qualifiers are starting, how much time you have, what you need to do. Their admins are very responsive. So if you guys want to get in on the competition, if you want me and AC to cast your matches, me and Rich to cast your matches, Juicy J's out there somewhere in the world, then make sure you guys go and join in all the things Royale Masters. As we mentioned, Friday and Saturday, we have a sudden death and heist competition going on, and Sunday is our combined championship. AC, we did 5 days total, and there's $20,000 in that pot, so it's definitely something you should get involved in. And then with today, $3,000 every single time we do one of these King of the Hills.
Yeah, the entire time you were talking, I realized that communicative has to be one of the hardest words in the world for me to pronounce. Like, after hearing your pronunciation and thinking about it, I might go on YouTube. I learned how to say squirrel the other day in French. It's like equerel. Nope, don't know how to say it.
Wow, sounds like you got really good at it.
Yeah. Oh, I practiced for like 26 seconds, so I thought it would have translated to the big screen, but not the case. But we move, and I'll learn how to say communicative. Wow.
There you go.
Okay, I'll learn them both, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's funny. There's sometimes I'll like start to say a word on broadcast and I'll just change halfway through and say the easier word because I'm like, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can say communicative right now.
There's a few times where I'm not sure if I actually know the definition of the word I'm saying.
I remember season 1, we had this incredible producer named Gina when we were at the studios of CRL West and East. And Gina was just this awesome producer, but every now and then after a broadcast, she'd be like, you said this word? That's not a real word, so you can't really say that word anymore. And I'd be like, really? She's like, yeah, you said, whatever it was, like dexmanship, back when I was trying to say like a real word. And she'd be like, yeah, so just to let you know, the word is communicative, not whatever it was. So anyway, big shout out to Gina wherever you are. I love you for keeping me honest. As we are seeing Goblin Giant Sparky, and Sparky does not connect on tower. AC, I don't care how long I play this game, I hate playing against Sparky. I just absolutely despise it.
Yeah, and I'm on the other side of that. No matter how many matches I can lose to a Sparky, and it can be technically the most obnoxious thing ever, I still find it to be a fun card. Even going against it, even when they counter, it is still a fun card to see on the board for me.
Well, that makes one of us, as we'll see who ends up picking up this match, as Goblin Giant Sparky. But for Lucas, I'm sure he's played this matchup a million times. He's a great Hog EQ player, so he probably knows exactly what he needs to do as he gives some value there to those arrows. I think it was skeletons that came down that were sniped off the board when he was looking for that firecracker, but I'm just curious how he's going to defend these pushes. So we see right there, firecracker in the back, skellies, and an ice spirit, it looked like, up front. Wow. And now a late Mighty Miner. Another Ice Spirit comes in, and that's picture perfect, right?
I mean, just absolutely gorgeous from Lucas, and I'm fairly certain he's now going to have the Firecracker evolution in hand. And so just exactly what he needed to do, the double Inferno Tower, quick cycle, even though his Firecracker plus Skellies were predicted with the arrows earlier. Oh, wow, the Goblin Giant actually snipes the Firecracker. So, yeah, I mean, Lucas doing a great job, but also Goblin Giant understanding its priorities and takes out the evolution Firecracker.
Yeah, I mean, man, watching Lucas play this deck really is, it just makes you want to play Hog EQ because, for one of the things that I noticed with his gameplay is just he always has a firecracker out. And I know that seems like it's just the obvious play, but I feel like Lucas almost abuses it better than anyone else that plays this deck. And now Lucas may be in a little bit of trouble. That Mighty Miner gets a huge shot, splash shot from the Sparky. Now an evolved firecracker has to come down, but a lot on top of that tower. Nothing there for the Sparky, so a second Inferno has to come out, and that's game right there. Goblin Giant, nothing to stop it.
Yep, he's not going to be able to stop that. Goblin Giant makes it to the tower, and the same emote that started it all is the one that he will finish on. So great run from Lucas. I believe that was 4 in a row or something like that. And
yeah,
and we will see him, I believe, one more time. I think he will be the last match going against whoever is the last on the King of the Hill.
Yeah, I think from here on out, anytime you lose, you're done for the day. Maybe, we'll see. It just depends on how it exactly works out. I can't remember, because sometimes if a player wins and it happens at a certain point, if you lose early on enough, either way, Lucas will be around again no matter what. But that matchup is kind of what I'm talking about. Like, Lucas is better than I'll ever be at the game, and Umaton is probably also better than I'll ever be at the game. I don't know if he's one of the best Goblin Giant Sparky players in the world or not, but I do know Lucas is one of the best Hog EQ players in the world, especially with that evolved firecracker. And I think as you just get deeper in that game, it becomes very difficult to defend, because what happens is if you start to get damage in one lane, a Goblin Giant Sparky player, if they're good, will very easily change lanes and just set up a Sparky in the back, which means that you have to start going in the opposite lane. And that's kind of what Lucas did. But then the moment that you overspend just enough on offense and you don't have enough on defense, or if they just get one bad interaction, right? Or for them, I guess, a good interaction. Because for Lucas, I think really what cost him was he placed the Mighty Miner next to an Inferno tower. The Sparky splashed on both, and then the Mighty Miner didn't have enough HP to tank for that Goblin Giant, and then it just started that downhill roll that Goblin Giant Sparky goes on, where they just start playing everything at the bridge. AC, when you have only one tank and an expensive building, and then the only way to stop a Sparky is with an Ice Spirit or Skellies, like, I just don't know. I don't know how you play out of that. I really don't, after all these years, because they always have arrows or zap, and then they always have like a mini P.E.K.K.A. or a Royal Ghost or something to deal with the splash units. I don't know how you play through it.
You know, I think really Lucas played 95% of the situations exactly correct. And then there was just 3 interactions that went poorly. Obviously, the Mighty Miner being the biggest one. There was another situation where the Goblin Giants, one of the Spear Goblins ended up shooting the Firecracker instead of going to the Inferno Tower. And that was the Evolution Firecracker, so that was massive. And then really, there was one situation where he's trying to create opposite lane pressure. He goes in with a Hog on the left lane, and at the exact same time, he used the Sparky on the defense to set up a push, and so the Sparky ended up just defending the Hog. So it was just 3 interactions, I believe, that just cost him the entire game.
And that last one that you're talking about is kind of just like, it for me at least, it always happens. When I'm playing that matchup specifically, it basically always happens where there's a moment where I'm trying to figure out where I need to go, and then finally my opponent just sets up a Sparky at the most perfectly inopportune time, and it's game over. So looks like it will not be Goblin Giant Sparky for our friend at the top of the screen. It looks like he's going to go with Rascal's Goblin Hut, something that's been a lot less popular ever since that big-time Goblin Hut nerf. And then Pedro at the bottom of your screen going with something we've seen all day long, with just a change-up of Spirit. He's going to go Fire instead of Ice.
Will the Hog get the second shot? It will. It will. I don't know why I started to say it will not. Gets the tower down to 1663, and wow, I mean, just Pedro starting off strong. I mean, RG is quite good. It's quite delicious when you play it, but it feels like just Hog Firecracker has to be the best deck in the meta right now.
Yeah, it really does just feel like the way to go. And honestly, we're starting to see a change-up, I think, of what was most popular in the meta from Bomb Tower to now looking like Inferno Tower, just because of RG being everywhere. And there you go. Look at that. We talked about it before. What can you do? Well, I can spend 5 elixir for your 7, and you're going to get a ton of damage, and I get no counter push. The other thing that I like that Pedro has done, not doing it this time around, but it just reminded me, and it's something that I think a lot of people should start to do. Actually, yeah, whether the King Tower is activated or not, but if you have a Firecracker crossing the bridge and you have a 1 elixir card, throw it in front. Like, those skeletons last time created another big shot for Pedro, and that's just 1 elixir spent that makes your opponent go, well, now I can't exactly just activate King Tower because the Firecracker is going to get a shot no matter what, so then I just completely ignore it. So, just an interesting thing that you can do.
Yeah, and, I mean, really, a lot of this game for Umaton, I mean, it's just... It comes down to poor interactions, because there's been multiple times where the Firecracker is staying alive because he'll place a troop way too high, and then the Firecracker will go back across the bridge. And so, this game definitely gets locked up for just that reason alone.
Yeah, and you know, that's another thing that, like, we talked earlier about how, like, the ability to protect your Firecracker is becoming, like, such an important part of the game, whether it's with Ice Spirit plus log or Skellies plus log, or just placing a unit once your Firecracker shoots so she's now out of range. And, you know, conversely, you have to make sure that your Firecrackers are getting either a lot of value or you're taking your opponents out, because just feeding elixir into them is a great surefire way to just lose games. And getting those Firecracker interactions down offensively, it's just as important to get them down defensively, because they are what Clash Royale is right now, it feels like.
Yeah. And so Umaton will be our first player completely knocked out. I think he walks away with $275 for the day. So that is certainly something to be proud of, and something you can build on. So congratulations to him. And now we get to the part where it's just sudden death every single time. I absolutely love these sections of tournaments, because every single decision you make is so important.
Yeah, life's on the line, back up against the wall. You know, every single time you win, you're going to pick up another $100, which is like, why not? It's Wednesday morning. Let's have a good time. And yeah, for Lucas and Dominic, it's been a very good day. And it looks like now it's Pedro's opportunity to try to get back up there. I mean, technically, I think anyone other than obviously Umaton can still get first place. Yeah, if they just go on a run. I mean, maybe depending on where they come up in the lineup, maybe because Bob the Rock was like last out, it might be hard for him with only 2 wins, but I think they could still be in a pretty good spot. But, you know, Pedro is someone who has been really, really strong today. Sweep on the other side of it, we've seen great moments from Sweep, but it feels like a fighter out of practice, right? He's got some good footwork here and there. He'll land a jab, but he just doesn't seem to have like that quite knockout blow that he had last year, even just in 2022. So we'll see what it is. You know, Sweep is a guy that's always kind of avoided the strict part of the meta, but he's always been successful doing it that way. But we've always said, like, maybe just lean into it just a little bit more. But today, I don't think it's been only the decks for Sweep. I think it's just been some of the gameplay and decision making.
Yeah, I think that has to be the main part of it. It's kind of interesting to think about, where with the dual format of CRL, having crazy decks can like really catch your opponents off guard, where oh, you have a spell in this one that shouldn't, but this is already game 3, so how does he have this spell? There's a lot of things you can do with that. And then it gets interesting to think about where if there's no bans and you can use any cards, well, he can't really have that that sort of thing that you have to worry about anymore. So it's kind of cool to see a regular tournament and the differences in decks because of it.
Yeah, that point that you make about Sweep really is interesting when you talk about someone that can craft decks so uniquely. It also puts him in positions in games 2 and then especially in a game 3 of like a best of 3 where he could be in a better situation than the average meta player is ever in, right? Because he hasn't used those cards, because he is able to play something that's so weird in game number 3 with all the cards that are still available. So, you know, Sweep is a guy that I would be... At this point, I hate to say it, but I feel like I'd be maybe surprised if I saw him at World Finals in 2023. but there's still a lot of time left. There's still, I think, 3 monthly finals left. There's still plenty of time for him to make something happen. We'll see if he can start here in Royale Masters King of the Hill edition, as Pedro, one of our golden ticket holders, has been playing really, really well today, just been living strictly in the meta. AC, of all the decks we've seen today, is the Lucas Freeze Arrows Barbarians Graveyard deck the one that you want to play most, or is there something else or do you want to just go play Hog EQ with Firecracker because it's been so dominant? Anything that you want to go try out when we wrap up our day?
I promise you I'm not going to touch the Hog Firecracker for at least 24 hours. And I might switch up a couple things in the graveyard deck that Lucas played, but it is certainly the most exciting, and it is certainly something I haven't added a deck from a competition in forever, just because so often it's the same thing that we're going to see in the meta, and if you're in any kind of top level ladder, you're going to see it all the time, so you can just copy it from your opponents eventually. But this one, it really feels fresh to the game, and I have to admit, like, Ice Wizard is one of my favorite cards of all time. I remember unlocking it. It was my first legendary. I remember showing it to my... Yeah, I remember it was like on the walk after...
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So it looks like we were just getting word from our production that there was an issue with the spectator feature. So we're just hopping into the game. And, I mean, the curse of the caster goes both ways. We were talking about how Sweep's been struggling today. Well, not so much in this game, it looks like. 1434 ticking away on that right-hand tower, and Sweep very much in the lead. Pedro down to 485 as another push coming down this lane.
That was the first time I've ever been able to share my Ice Wizard story. That was so close. Pedro doing what he can. Applying a little bit of pressure, stopping the miner. So, I mean, he's, again, just doing everything right. He might need a NATO, and he does use the NATO, so 147 left. Trying to get as aggressive as possible. 923, it's just not going to be enough.
Yeah.
And Sweep going to walk away with a victory. And, yeah, congrats to Sweep. We were saying negative things as he won.
We were questioning maybe where you were at in your skills, and I'm glad you're able to put those questions to rest very quickly. Sweep picks up a win, knocks out Pedro for the day. As you guys were able to maybe quickly see on the right-hand side of your screen, we've got Dominic, Assaf, Sosa, Bob the Rock, and Lucas all coming up next. And it looks like someone was really waiting to see Sweep play, and Chicken Studios, I'm sorry that we hop into that game late, but luckily for you, Sweep did pick up the win, so you'll get another full game coming your way in just a moment. To go back to what you were talking about, AC, your wonderfully heartwarming Ice Wizard story, the deck that Lucas played that we were excited about, Skeleton Dragons, after their buff, pretty strong, Ice Wizard, Mighty Miner, Evolved Barbarians, and then the other 4 cards, we have 2 spells and arrows, and Freeze, Win Condition and Graveyard, and then Inferno Tower. So really unique deck there. It did go up against Hog EQ with Firecracker, Evolved Firecracker, and Bomb Tower. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to try it out. And yeah, like someone in the chat pointed out, after the Skeleton Drags change, which almost feels like no one's been talking about, it has been reflected in gameplay. We've been seeing them, you know, more and more today than we've seen in competition in a long time.
And do you know what the official change was for it?
I do. Let me check. I think it was like they were spread out more or something like that. Hit points and distance. Yeah, so on June 6th, it increased their hit points by 5.8%, and it increased the distance between the two of them on deployment.
I see. And yeah, that's enough to already set them up for success. So Sweep taking a page out of Bob the Rock's book, going in with the Inferno Dragon Bowler, although this looks like a slightly different variation just because it's the bowler, but that's going to be 2 shots, and the Dark Goblin will run away, so no damage on the Dark Goblin, but 2 massive shots from the balloon.
Yeah, Dominic going right back to this bait deck that worked really well for him before. Evolved Barbarians finding their place in something that isn't just the skies and isn't actually just going to be a graveyard deck. Working out great in bait. Second Princess shot comes in. 1066 and 1314. But Sweep does a good job. with 1148 on Dominic's lower right-hand tower.
And Bowler just in this meta, although one of the barbs will make it to the tower. Bowler in this meta, I mean, it feels like it should be incredible because, hey, you know, barbs are really good, and I mean, actually, barbs is where it ends. But the main thing is, if you're going against the firecracker, it's just going to get so much value, and it's always going to stay on the board, and it's going to outcycle your responses to it. So the bowler ends up becoming a detriment to your deck instead of something where it's going to provide a lot of value. So it's a card that in theory should be really good, but it just feels like in practice it never is.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on that thought, you know, the bowler is a great response to Hog Rider also, but the way that Hog Rider's played now, you just offset your firecracker, and then you've got a ton of splash damage on top of your tower with the bowler pushing the hog away. So I agree. It feels like the bowler should maybe be a little bit better than it is based off of, like, on paper scenarios. But obviously, in actual gameplay, you can see the bowler struggling a bit. And Dominic, if there's a second or a close second place for decks I want to play today, this bait deck that he's been playing been really, really, really powerful. I mean, I think the evolved barbs do such a good job dealing with Hog Riders, and then you just have a way to create so much pressure with the rest of your deck. Maybe it succeeds against Royal Giant because you can't build those big pushes. And then you also have cards like the Princess and Dark Goblin that are very difficult to get to when you have to still worry about wall breakers and barrels. So Dominic finding a lot of fun with bait.
Yeah, and his deck, I mean, you have 3 responses to air. One of them is a princess. One of them is a Goblin Gang. Okay, 4 responses technically.
Yeah.
One of them is the Dark Goblin, and one of them is the arrows. So you have 4 terrible responses to Balloon. And if this had been like a Cycle Loon or a Monk Loon, it could have been a lot of... It could have been very difficult. But he was able to apply so much pressure. At the end of the game, he was able to block it at the bridge, so that way the Dark Goblin would lock on to the Loon instead of the tower and the Dark Goblin locking onto the Lumberjack.
Right,
so I mean, there's a lot of different plays that you have to make because of the setup of the deck, but the constant pressure, the Barb's Evo, and just spamming things at the bridge, it makes for a very enjoyable time as a viewer.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point about, like, the interesting decisions that you have to make, because this deck, when you watch him play it, it looks like so much fun. It looks like it has all the answers, and it's so dominant. But yeah, you see, he's got no building. He's got no building in a meta that is just completely dominated by Royal Giant and by Hog Rider, but he has all these great responses, and like you said, he's got all these abilities to make great decisions that then make your opponent play weird. You know, the Evolved Barbarians don't feel like they should be enough, but the Evolved Barbarians plus the Mighty Miner plus the Goblin Gang, like those 3 cards alone, it seems like are maybe enough to deal with an RG or a Hog Rider push, that he goes, you know what, I don't need a building because I'm going to be able to create so much pressure. I can defend cheaply while creating offensive pressure that you can't do Hog Firecracker at the bridge. You can't do Royal Giant plus all the support behind.
Right. 1 minute into the game, and 500 HP taken off the tower for Assaf, and Assaf just going to be running one of those Mighty Miner Firecracker Inferno Tower decks. Inferno Tower is only 1 shot away though, so will need another response, and that's what he does. Dominic just running. Here is okay, and I have answered my own question. There's a lot of arrows in these kind of decks, and I'd have to assume it's probably because the Firecracker is just completely dominating the meta.
Inferno Tower coming down here. Mighty Miner plus Inferno Tower. E-Spirit going to get there just a little bit late, but doesn't matter because the Mighty Miner plus the Inferno will be more than enough.
Phoenix locking everything up. A little bit of a baby counter push. With the bats, it won't be able to reach the tower, and he's not going to send anything in to try and protect the egg, so just going to be a full reset from both players. Soft cycling the Mighty Miner in the middle.
And just getting a bit of an update here from League Ops. If you notice on the right-hand side of your screen, unfortunately for Sosa fans, it looks like we were unable to get a hold of him after losing his last match. But fortunately for all the Umaton fans, or fans of Japanese players, that means he gets one last go. So after this game, we have Bob the Rock, then Lucas, then Umaton to close things out. Unfortunately, like I just said, Sosa will not be able to play his very last game. But still, congrats to him on the day for showing up. Like I said, even if you don't pick up a win, you still get that qualifying money, as 15 seconds remain in regulation between Dominic and Assaf. Really great close game so far. Dominic down by 700, but we've seen how quickly these evolved RG decks make things happen in just one push.
Yeah, and this RG, I mean, very healthy overall. Firecracker is going to be taken out completely, and wow, all those shots from the RG are going to have the goblins get spread out, but not going to be enough just to take the tower out completely.
It's crazy how much just one good evolved RG push can do. I mean, there was an evolved Firecracker there to defend. Obviously, Assaf has a building. There's just so much that Assaf has to respond to, but it just isn't enough.
I mean, there should be weaknesses in this deck because you have no building, you don't have a reset, and it just there's no struggle with a lot of the matchups it has.
Yeah, and you can see there, Assaf does get a couple wall breaker connections, but he knows that that wall breaker connection means that, look, that was one of those interesting moments where Assaf was trying to bait out a response from his opponent and create offensive pressure. I mean, excuse me, and create like an offensive presence. But his opponent, Dominic, did the correct thing, which goes, all right, if you want to spend 2 on wall breakers and that tower is completely healthy, that means you have 2 less to defend. So I'm just going to send everything down the right-hand lane. And Assaf goes, all right, well, you know, I tried to bluff you. You didn't bite. And now I'm just going to log the center of the board and call it a day. The fascinating thing for me about where we're at in the meta is we will watch 50 games and 25 will win with RG and 25 will win with Firecracker. And I will say the other one looks more dominant for that whole run. But then just like that, my mind will get switched. Like it feels like Hog EQ with Firecracker is the only way to go. But then you watch a good game with the evolved RG and you're like, well, how could anything beat that deck? I don't know, man.
Yeah. I will say, actually, and so with that last game, I'm recognizing that I'm going to change my answer. I think I'm going to use, well, actually, I don't even have the evolutions. So, never mind. My answer stays firm.
Well, if you've been playing the challenges they've been throwing out and you got the free shards they put in the shop, I think everyone out there should be able to have 1 card evolution for free.
Yes. If done properly, everybody should have 1.
You're like, but I didn't play any of those challenges, and I forgot to go open the shop that day.
Yeah. That's what happened.
So Boilerloon Freeze again coming out here. Bob the Rock going to go back to it after his success earlier on today. And here's a fun push. Inferno tanking for the Loon, which is getting shot at by the Dark Goblin with a bowler in tow.
Yeah, and that looks like it's going to be towered down, and that's actually a bad NATO by Bob the Rock. He would have taken the tower regardless, and he doesn't have the right responses now. Wow, that is a massive error from Bob.
That's tough, man. That's really, really tough. And that just, again, shows like where Dominic's at in his play style. He saw that he got beat outright on that left-hand lane, and then he decided to sit back and go, what do I do? And then Bob the Rock, like you said, AC, he throws in that NATO, a completely wasted NATO, and then he goes from having 5 elixir to defend to just 2, and he just can't do it. If he had that 5 elixir, he could have just played the Electro Dragon. It'd be GG, well played. Moving on to the next game.
Not necessarily. I mean, Bait's still pretty cool. Like, he can still get a lot of pressure. But yeah, actually though, it just one simple error, and now, I mean, at the end of the day though, he does have this Lumber Loon going against a no big spell kind of deck. So there is a lot of potential for him to still walk away with the victory.
I just feel like he's just giving up way too much. I mean, that's King Tower. He's got to, he's got to freeze it. And then we go Princess in there with wall breakers in the pocket. That's Princess Tower. So, man, Dominic really, really playing this bait deck well.
Yeah, at this point, game is certainly locked up. I don't even know. Yeah, he didn't even have Barber in the cycle, so that's just going to be game over. Not even going to get the second crown for Bob and Dominic. I mean, who would have thought? I mean, he's a top 5 bait player in the world, apparently.
Apparently, yeah. I mean, when you said who would have thought, I was like, what do you mean who would have thought? I mean, it's Dominic. But then when you say who would have thought, you're talking about him dominating with bait today. And that's absolutely, I would have never thought that's the way he's going to go. Dominic dominating with bait, not using the card evolution that is the most popular in the Firecracker. And then the bait deck that he's running, not having a building in it in a meta that is completely dominated by RG and Hog. So it's been a lot of fun. I think the biggest thing is that people are so committed to their Firecrackers and their Hog Firecracker pushes and building those RG pushes that Dominic is just going, all right, while you're spending all your time doing that, I'm going to do my best to defend, but I'm going to make sure that opposite tower is really hurting. So no matter what, we're going to come out in a pretty much even situation. And then when you get to 2-tower game, he's been doing such a good job. I don't know, the Dark Goblins and the Princesses being spread out, the ability to create so much pressure with the Goblin Gang, because the Goblin Gang becomes like the forgotten card, right? But we all know how much damage a Goblin Gang can do, but you're so focused on dealing with the Dark Goblin and the Princess and the Evolved Barbs. I don't know, those and the Barrel, it feels like that Goblin Gang is getting a lot of value. Let's take a look here at our leaderboard as we've got just a few games left on the day. Wow. Dominic and Lucas about to play, so perfect setup here from our admins, and big shout out to Tasty Bacon, who's like, bro, here it is. This is it. Lucas, if he picks up a win, he can tie things out, and then if he wins against Umaton, he will actually take the lead and be our winner of King of the Hill here in June. Dominic in a spot to just close things out. If he takes a win here against Lucas, that'll do it. That'll be him as the King of the Hill this month. A lot of fun. And then, of course, Umaton has one last life to give. This has been the fun one for the whole day. I mean, there's been a lot of really great matchups, but we keep finding Dominic and Lucas playing against each other. But I think it's been Lucas that has taken both the prior 2 games.
Wow. Yeah, this really does feel like the championship game. It feels like the winner's bracket final right now with this. Both players have done so many amazing things today. Really, one thing I want to say about Dominic's deck with the bait deck is I think it's a bad deck. I think it's an objectively bad deck, but because of the way the tournament is set up and none of the players are adjusting to it, it's the most brilliant choice ever, and it allows him to succeed in it. But I don't think this deck would work in any other tournament. It's just he's smart enough to know that in this specific moment in time, that is one of the best decks in the meta. I do think it doesn't work anywhere, though.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point that you make. I mean, we've found that before in competitions where someone kind of finds the deck of the day, and no one thinks that deck's going to just keep coming out. But the adjustment is there, or the adjustment never comes through, and the deck just dominates. I mean, that's why I kept saying what I was saying, where I'm like, it doesn't really make sense that this deck with no building is able to just completely dominate. Like, no building and no evolved cards is able to dominate. But Dominic missing there. And other thing I noticed here, AC, is that Dominic is not running evolved barbarians, right? Oh, he's running regular barbs. So it must be an evolved royal. I mean, it feels like he's going to the skies, though.
Yeah.
But it feels like it must be Royal Giant if he's not using evolved barbs. Maybe the oops is that he's recognized he's not running evolved barbs.
So, right tower is left. Left tower is down officially now. Dominic coming out with the oops, activating the king tower, and Lucas.
Yeah, I mean,
what a weird game.
I know, it's like you can't even commentate on it because you don't. It doesn't make any sense. Like, nothing that's happening makes any sense. I'm assuming that's what happened, right? Is that Dominic's running like Barb's Lava Loon with Miner, or I mean, Bob? I don't know. Why is there a fisherman there?
Yeah.
It's RG. It's got to be RG.
I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I mean,
shouldn't be
dude,
RG.
I don't know. I'm just furiously refreshing Royale API to figure out what that deck was. Lucas just going, hey man, that was the best game I played today.
And so you said he was 3-0 against, or he's 3-0 now against him?
Yeah, it's just been a day. It's been tough for Dominic against Lucas, and then obviously that game, no different. Now furiously refreshing to try and figure out what the deck was. It does feel like Dominic just like maybe didn't put the right evolved card in, but I don't know. It's of course going to be the one game of the day that Royale API like isn't tracking or something. So I don't know. When we get to the bottom of it, we'll figure it out. I don't know if Tasty, I don't know if you can see what deck he was running, what that last card was, but yeah, either way, we're going to be trying to get to the bottom of that. As we are up to our last match of the day, Lucas now tying things up at 6 wins, I believe, with Dominic. I think that's where he was at, which means either Umaton wins, pulls off a crazy, I guess, kind of upset at this point, since I think he only had 1 win on the day up to this point, and then makes Lucas and Dominic tie, or Lucas wins outright and is able to take the title for the month. What was that deck? It was, okay, so yeah, it was... Okay, Lava, Loon, Inferno, Barbs, Miner, Zap, Arrows, and then Fishboy. So it looks like he was going for a Lava Loon deck. He didn't place the Evolved Barbarians, and then maybe was using Fisherman as a response to RG or Hog. Does that seem right?
Yeah, so you have the Inferno Dragon for the RG. I mean, really, it comes down to if he has the Evolved Barbs, it makes sense against Hog. So yeah, I mean, it used to be a popular deck. The Juicy one is famously known for running this, or that specific Lava Loon deck. Yeah. And it just kind of has a lot of success on ladder, even before the evolution Barbs variation. So it's a strong deck. It just comes down to placing the wrong troop instead of the evolution one.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's a strong deck, you wonder if there's still a way to play through it, but I guess Dominic just wanted no business with it, or maybe just with the situation he was in, he knew it wasn't a good spot. So very kind of similar to what Mohamed Light did in his, I think, triple elixir day, was he came out with Evolved Skeletons in his very last game of the day and was not able to pick up a win with it. We'll see if Lucas can do that here, as he's running Evolved Skeletons with this Miner Loon deck. Very fast cycle, and I don't know. I still have yet to see, other than when Morton posted a video on his Twitter, I have yet to see the Skeletons do anything since they've been evolved.
Yep, I've seen I've seen the Skeletons put in work 2 separate times in my life. Well, 2 times in my life, and it was the same video twice. So I got to agree with that. 130 left. Ghost going down the right lane. Lucas with a strong advantage right now. And one thing that I find odd, but I mean, it makes sense, but I do find it odd, is that everybody uses the Phoenix variation of these Loon decks, when Musketeer used to be the best card in the game in those Ice Golem Loon decks, in those Cycle Loon decks. So it just shows how strong the Phoenix is overall in this meta.
Yeah, I mean, we started our day off with a mirror matchup of Loon decks, and exactly what you're saying, AC, was that the Phoenix deck came out on top. Evolved Skeletons almost get to the tower, but they don't. Would have been exciting, but it's not. And Phoenix goes back to life. Nice snowball there from Lucas. Going to allow this Phoenix to get, not another shot on tower, but does take the life of his opponent's Phoenix. Now Arrows coming down to clear the path, and now there's nothing in the skies for Umaton.
That was a crazy play, and he gets the shot. That is so deserved. That is one of the few interactions where you just celebrate when a player succeeds because of the play. He goes in with the Ice Golem Loon the entire time, thinking, what are you doing? That's going to be another Phoenix that spawned. It's been 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds, and he still gets the arrows out on time and catches the bats.
It did not feel like he had time to get the arrows out. And then I love the decision-making that he goes Snowball on top of the Princess Tower and the Phoenix so that his Miner can get more damage, and then goes Arrows on top of the Spear Goblins, just painting his opponent completely in a corner. Perfectly played there by Lucas, who has a great day. Obviously, Dominic probably a little bit bummed about those Evolved Barbarians. That felt like it was our championship match of the day, but Lucas is able to tie it up and then take the lead. He is our king of the hill here at the very end of June. Exciting stuff to see him You know, Andorra, we saw him hoist the trophy in person. Now we're seeing some success online. Maybe CRL July will be the month for the Brazilian, but obviously there's more to be told in that story. But here, in the King of the Hill Royale Masters Edition, it was a fun day. It was a fun day of still you and I kind of learning what this game is becoming with card evolutions.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed all the games today. A lot of new decks that I know that I have to watch out for CRL, and then a lot of new decks that, well, actually a lot of new decks that I know I don't have to worry about, and then just some decks that I can play myself. This was it's certainly a joy when all these players are playing for high stakes, but at the same time they still can have fun with their decks and they still can try new things. Where, I mean, yes, it's one of those situations where you can actually use a worse deck, lose, but still be okay with it, because it's like, hey, I was going to do that in CRL. I was going to do that in this competition, and you learn a certain thing that you just can't do. So just a very cool day for commentary for me.
Yeah, and I really do love what Royale Masters is doing, having all these competitions, especially in moments right now where the meta is changing so drastically every single day. What better way for pros and players alike to learn what to play, what does work and what doesn't work, and also learn matchups. So let's take a look here at our leaderboard. Just to remind you guys of the journey that we went on today, it was Sosa who came up with the goose egg. $75 in his pocket, though. Assaf, kind of doing the Assaf thing, right? Exceptional player, but just not putting things together. One win on the day. Sweep doing sweep things. Bob the Rock was able to show up and do some good work. Umaton actually picked up 2 wins on the day. Our golden ticket holder and Pedro had some good ups and downs, but it was really all about Dominic and Lucas. A fun budding rivalry starting there. I'd love to see just practice between the two of them. I feel like the two of them are at great equal skill levels. They should be practicing dual mode to get ready for CRL and World Finals. Lucas ends up taking the win there after Evolved Barbs are not played by Dominic. So that's going to do it for us here today at Royale Masters King of the Hill edition. For myself and AC and everyone here at Royale Masters, remember, there's a lot going on this week. We got 3 more days of broadcast, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You can be involved in all of them if you're able to put in work on Friday and Saturday. Friday is our sudden death competition, and Saturday is our heist competition, all part of Royale Masters Summer Clash Edition party mode. I'll be there, AC will be there, and so will all the great people at Royale Masters. For everyone here, we thank you for joining us. Congratulations to Lucas, and we will see you Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Take care.